Chapter 1282, Master of the Fiend Saber. Chapter 1282, Master of the Fiend Saber. Brother Yin. Su Zimo was shocked. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was extremely precious, and he barely survived just to obtain it. If not for a freak coincidence, he might have become a corpse in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple as well. However, that elixir was crushed by Yin Beichen casually. Brother Yin, why sigh? Su Zimo sighed. Of course, he could understand why Yin Beichen would do anything given the circumstances. Even if the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was destroyed, he could think of another way to search for it. Tianhuang mainland was vast and boundless with countless ancient ruins. He could definitely find another one. Pian Ran is already dead. What's the point of this elixir to me? Yin Beichen looked at Qin Pian Ran's face in a daze and said calmly. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The reason why Yin Beichen crushed the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was because he was already bent on dying. Brother Yin, now that things have come to this, you have to take care. Even with her death, fellow Daoist Qin wouldn't want you to be this despondent. Worried, Su Zimo consoled softly. That's right, Yin Beichen said. Pian Ran wanted me to be fine before she left. But how can I? How can I live alone without Pian Ran? Suddenly, his expression turned extremely pained as he pounded the ground repeatedly with his fists, causing mud to fly everywhere. I hate it. I hate it so much. Yin Beichen reared his head and cried into the skies. His eyes were bloodshot as he let out a tragic howl. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying power spread out from Yin Beichen's body. It was a familiar power that caused Su Zimo's heart to skip a beat. Immediately after, the ground beneath Su Zimo's feet trembled. It was as though something extremely terrifying had awoken and was charging out from underground. Su Zimo's expression changed. Suddenly, he thought of an ancient fiend item. Boom! Right then, the ground not far away suddenly cracked and a black shadow surged into the skies. It emitted rumbling fiend chi as though it wanted to devour the world. Su Zimo focused his gaze. The hatred fiend saber. That ancient fiend saber was the most terrifying weapon Su Zimo had seen up till this point of his cultivation. To think that this ancient fiend saber would possess such sentience that it could sense the immense power of hatred contained within Yin Beichen's body and came into being. Clang! Clang! The blade of the hatred fiend saber trembled continuously. Su Zimo could sense the joy and excitement of a living being coming from that ancient fiend saber. Sure. The hatred fiend saber transformed into a black shadow that shone with a cold glint. Carrying a torrential fiend chi, it stabbed towards Yin Beichen. Watch out! Su Zimo hollered and struck all of a sudden. Summoning the creation lotus platform, he charged towards the hatred fiend saber. Boom! The green light and pitch-black fiend shadow collided with a deafening bang. A semicircular halo of power burst forth from the collision point of the two weapons and spread wildly in all directions. Against the impact of that power, Su Zimo could not steady himself and was sent flying while his creation lotus platform fell to the side. Su Zimo was shocked. Even when used by Dao Lord Hatred, this ancient fiend saber did not possess such terrifying power. After flying for dozens of feet, Su Zimo ignored the pain in his body and struggled to stand up hurriedly, looking in Yin Beichen's direction. Immediately, his expression changed. The hatred fiend saber had already stabbed towards Yin Beichen's chest and entered instantly. It pierced Yin Beichen's chest, and a bloodied blade protruded from his back. Brother Yin! Su Zimo exclaimed, and wanted to charge forward. The power of his essence spirit was almost depleted after his battle with Immortal Sword and Cloud Rain. However, even if he had to risk his life, he could not let anything happen to Yin Beichen. Don't come over. Right then, Yin Beichen roared. Su Zimo stopped in his tracks. Yin Beichen had a pained expression as his features were squeezed together. Although his body was trembling from the pain, he grit his teeth and said, again, "It's not painful enough." The moment he said that, the hatred fiend saber pulled itself out and pierced Yin Beichen's chest once more. Good again. Yin Beichen roared. Poof! Another slash. That slash had already punctured Yin Beichen's abdomen. Good, good, good. Yin Beichen roared in laughter as though he had gone mad. Again. With each stab of the hatred fiend saber, Yin Beichen's body would tremble in pain. However, his eyes revealed relief as a form of release instead. Su Zimo watched everything in a daze. He finally understood why Yin Beichen did not allow him to step forward. That was because Yin Beichen was using this method to torture himself. It was to resolve the pain in his heart. Perhaps that was the only way he could ease the pain in his heart. Poof, poof, poof. In the blink of an eye, Yin Beichen had already been struck dozens of times. Bloody wounds appeared on his body in a shocking manner, and his chest was almost punctured by the hatred fiend saber. There was another reason why Su Zimo did not step forward to stop it. That was because although he was shocked to discover that Yin Beichen's heart had already shattered after receiving so many slashes, and he had lost a lot of blood qi, the life force in his body did not deplete. Instead, it intensified. His power of blood qi was rising rapidly. An extremely terrifying power gradually awakened, germinated, and grew within Yin Beichen's body. Balls of pitch-black fiend qi grew within Yin Beichen's body, turning richer and more terrifying as they enveloped his body. The blood vessels in Yin Beichen's eyes had already turned black. His eyes turned pitch black like two gigantic black holes, and the hatred within seemed like it could devour everything. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could clearly see that Yin Beichen's wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye under the shroud of the rumbling fiend qi. Finally, the hatred fiend saber stopped. It stood upright in front of Yin Beichen. The body of the ancient fiend saber was tainted with Yin Beichen's endless blood. At that moment, the aura it emitted had already fused with Yin Beichen. The hatred fiend saber had already acknowledged its master through blood. Yin Beichen's consciousness seemed to be out of his control as well. He reached out with both hands and gripped the handle of the hatred fiend saber. Rumbling fiend qi extended from the saber and surged into his body. The fiend qi formed dark, sinister, and cold words in midair. Every single word was filled with torrential hatred. The hatred was boundless and extended to heaven and earth. Those words eventually surged into Yin Beichen's body. Upon seeing that, Su Zimo finally understood something. He finally knew why he could not find the Hatred Sutra in the storage bag of Dao Lord Hatred back then. It was not because the Hatred Sutra was destroyed by Dao Lord Hatred, but because it was within the Hatred Fiend Saber itself. One was only qualified to cultivate this number one fiend technique of the ancient era after obtaining the recognition of the Hatred Fiend Saber. Chapter 1283, Birth of the Asura. Chapter 1283, Birth of the Asura. The Hatred Fiend Saber was the weapon of the ancient Fiend Emperor Hatred. The ancient Fiend Saber contained an extremely terrifying power that Dao Lord Hatred did not manage to release completely. But now, that power was finally showing itself. That power did not merely bring about changes to Yin Beichen's blood qi and body. Endless fiend qi surged into Yin Beichen's consciousness and coiled around his essence spirit. The wounds on his essence spirit were healing rapidly as well. Su Zimo felt mixed emotions when he sensed the changes in Yin Beichen. He was delighted that the Hatred Fiend Saber had recognized Yin Beichen as its master. At the very least, the latter's life was not in danger and the injury to his essence spirit was resolved. He was worried because no one knew what Yin Beichen would become after inheriting the legacy of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. About 2 hours later, Yin Beichen's essence spirit had already recovered. This speed was even faster than the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir. The power contained by the Hatred Fiend Saber came from the ancient Fiend Emperor after all. With the recovery of his essence spirit, Yin Beichen's aura rose rapidly under the support of that tremendous power. In less than an hour, there was a boom. Yin Beichen shuddered, and his cultivation realm rose by a level. He entered the Dharma Characteristic realm 20 years ago, and his essence spirit was injured thereafter. His cultivation realm had always been at the early stage Dharma Characteristic realm. In less than an hour, he was already at mid-stage Dharma Characteristic realm. However, that breakthrough was not over yet. 2 hours later, Yin Beichen broke through once more. Late-stage Dharma Characteristic realm. Back when Tao Lord Hatred obtained this ancient Fiend Saber, he merely inherited the Hatred Sutra but could not inherit the power of this Fiend Saber. That was because Tao Lord Hatred had not truly obtained the recognition of the Hatred Fiend Saber. However, it was different for Yin Beichen. Yin Beichen had completely inherited the Hatred Fiend Saber. The Hatred Fiend Saber appeared on its own accord to acknowledge him as its master. When night descended, Yin Beichen broke through once more. Perfected Dharma Characteristic realm. From early stage Dharma Characteristic to perfected Dharma Characteristic, it only took a day. This was a speed that no one in history could match. Such an opportunity was absolutely unprecedented. However, Su Zimo sighed gently internally. There was no hint of envy in his eyes. Instead, there was a deep look of pity. For anyone else, an opportunity as such was something they could only dream of. However, he knew that if Yin Beichen had to make a choice, he would rather have his essence spirit injuries never heal completely than receive such an opportunity. That was because the reason that triggered his torrential hatred, such that the Hatred Fiend Saber acknowledged him as its master, was the death of a kin. The injury to Yin Beichen's essence spirit had already healed. However, the wounds in his heart would probably never heal. After entering the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm, Yin Beichen's aura gradually stabilized. After all, there was a qualitative change in strength between the major cultivation realms, and there was an unimaginable barrier between them. The Hatred Fiend Saber had already reached its limit by allowing Yin Beichen to break through to the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm in a single day. In the blink of an eye, the night passed. Yin Beichen sat there motionlessly and gripped the Hatred Fiend Saber with both hands. His eyes were pitch black without any white in them as his gray hair swayed gently. For the entire day and night, Su Zimo stood by his side without taking a single step away. In fact, he did not even cultivate and recuperate by himself. He merely consumed a few elixirs casually and stayed by Yin Beichen's side, afraid that something would happen to him. The sun rose. A warm glow shone on Yin Beichen's cheeks. All of a sudden, Yin Beichen's expression changed and the black color in his fiend eyes faded gradually, revealing the whites of his eyes and returning to normal. "Brother Yin?" Su Zimo attempted to call out softly. "I am fine." Yin Beichen spoke slowly with a calm expression. Su Zimo heaved out a sigh of relief. Initially, he was worried that Yin Beichen would become a completely different person after inheriting the inheritance of the Hatred Fiend Saber, similar to the possibility of being assimilated. Now, it seemed like Yin Beichen still remembered him. Of course, Su Zimo could also vaguely sense that Yin Beichen was indeed different from before. At the very least, he did not have the same determination to die as earlier on. Hatred was right. Suddenly, Yin Beichen said, "It's impossible for me to lead a peaceful life with Pianran. I'm the Asura and my hands are tainted with endless blood. There's no way I can ever leave the cultivation world." Su Zimo was silent. To think that Tao Lord Hatred's final words would end up as a prophecy. "If I, Hatred, can find you today, someone else will do so tomorrow. You will never be able to leave the cultivation world or dream about living in peace." His words came true. Immortal Sword had indeed appeared. I was too naive. Yin Beichen's expression was mocking as he laughed. To think that I would really think that I could leave the secular world and avoid strife and killing. It's all my fault for Pianran's death. I was an Asura who achieved my Tao through killing. Since I chose this path, there's no way back. I was the one who killed Pianran. I shouldn't have fallen in love with her. Yin Beichen said those words calmly. However, Su Zimo knew that every single word was like a sharp thorn that stabbed Yin Beichen repeatedly in the chest. Yin Beichen carried Qin Pianran's cold corpse and stood up slowly, arriving at the crack where the Hatred Fiend Saber was born. "Pianran, don't worry. Those that hurt you this time round, I won't let anyone off. I'll make them pay 10, 100 times more. I'm going to turn Sword Sect into rivers of blood." Yin Beichen's tone revealed endless killing intent that was cold and sinister, causing one to shudder. Su Zimo knew. The Asura had returned. To be precise, the true Asura had just descended into this world. The current Asura was many times stronger than the former titular disciple, Yin Beichen. Yin Beichen no longer had any weaknesses. He no longer had any attachments or emotions. What was even more terrifying was that Yin Beichen had inherited the legacy of Fiend Emperor hatred, the Dao of the Asura, the Dao of hatred. Nobody knew what realm the Asura who cultivated the Hatred Sutra and wielded the Hatred Fiend Saber would reach. Su Zimo could not imagine either. Perhaps he might end up even more terrifying than the ancient Fiend Emperor hatred. Yin Beichen looked at Qin Pianran deeply with endless reluctance and longing in his eyes. He then made up his mind and released his hands. Qin Pianran's corpse fell into the dark abyss of the crack and gradually disappeared. From this day forth, there will only be the Asura and no Yin Beichen left in this world. Yin Beichen said and waved his sleeves gently. Bang! Boom! Boom! The crack on the ground healed slowly under his immense dermic powers, and in the blink of an eye, it returned to normal. It was as though Yin Beichen was already buried along with Qin Pianran in this abyss. Zimo, I'm leaving. The Asura leaped up. Brother Yin, where are you going? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat, and he asked hurriedly. He was afraid that Yin Beichen would be reckless and kill his way into Sword Sect impulsively. It was true that the Asura obtained the inheritance of the Fiend Emperor hatred, but he was only at the Dharma Characteristic realm at the end of the day. If he were to kill his way into Sword Sect, he would be suppressed by countless experts within at the top. Don't worry, I won't be reckless, the Asura said without turning back, and his figure disappeared quickly. Chapter 1284, Search. Chapter 1284, Search. Enigma Palace, Heavenly Secrets Dao Residence. Two figures flashed. Heavenly Secrets had brought Immortal Sword back to his Dao residence. Immortal Sword's face was pale as he panted slightly. His eyes were filled with endless hatred as he grit his teeth. Desolate Marshal, I'm irreconcilable with you. Although he was saved by Heavenly Secrets this time round, his essence spirit was injured. It was extremely difficult to recover from injuries to the essence spirit. Even with Sword Sect's foundation, they did not have miraculous elixirs similar to the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir. Initially, his plan to kill the Asura this time round would have definitely succeeded. To think that everything would be spoiled by a mere Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Heavenly Secret said indifferently, actually, you don't have to be overly indignant. At the very least, the Asura is crippled and your goal can be considered accomplished. That's right, that slut, Qin Pianran, is dead too. Immortal Sword nodded. Pausing for a moment, he turned and asked, Brother Heavenly Secrets, do you have the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir? If you do, I can help you obtain any treasure you want in exchange. Sorry. Heavenly Secrets smiled apologetically. Immortal Sword's gaze dimmed, and his expression darkened once more. There was a fleeting hint of mockery in the depths of Heavenly Secrets' eyes. Even if he had the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir, he would definitely not hand it over to Immortal Sword, let alone the fact that he did not have one with him. At most, the two of them were just making use of one another. Furthermore, Immortal Sword was a narrow-minded and ungrateful person. Even if he was given the 9 Revolution Soul Return Elixir, he would not remember this favor. What happened to Qin Pianran? She was still killed mercilessly in the end. Dao Lord Cloud Rain had known him for so many years and was schemed against by him, resulting in his death. A moment later, Immortal Sword asked in a seemingly casual manner, By the way, how did you arrive so coincidentally, Brother Heavenly Secrets? Initially, there was no mistake in my divination for your trip, and I did not follow along. Heavenly Secrets said, however, not long after. I divined once more and discovered that the trajectory of this matter had suddenly turned blurry. I realized that something might have happened and made a move immediately. Although Heavenly Secret still had a warm expression and explained patiently, he sneered internally. He could tell that Immortal Sword already bore some resentment towards him. Immortal Sword continued, "Brother Heavenly Secrets, Desolate Marshal's combat strength was already weakened after he expended his stamina and released Essence Spirit secret skills consecutively. Why didn't you take advantage of that rare opportunity to kill him?" "I can't kill him." Heavenly Secrets was still not impatient in the slightest as he shook his head. "Indeed, I can defeat Desolate Marshal with ease given my capabilities. However, it's impossible to kill him. Desolate Marshal knows many escape techniques. If he sees that something is amiss and uses his escape techniques to flee, I won't be able to catch up to him either. Furthermore, Desolate Marshal already noticed my existence beforehand. His senses are way too sharp." Bang! Immortal Sword slammed his fist heavily on the stone table beside him to vent the rage in his heart. Gritting his teeth, he said, "It's probably going to be extremely difficult to kill Desolate Marshal now that this opportunity was missed." Desolate Marshal cultivated 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, and each of them is 87 feet tall. However, he's merely at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. Once he enters the conjoint body realm, only a Mahayana Patriarch will be able to suppress him. The conjoint body realm was to fuse heaven and earth Dharma characteristics into one's body. If Desolate Marshal were to advance to the conjoint body realm and fused with the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics he cultivated, what would happen to his combat strength? Heavenly Secrets was in no hurry nor frustrated when he heard Immortal Sword's grumble. He said indifferently, "There might be a chance." "Oh." Immortal Sword raised his brow and asked, "Why do you say that?" Heavenly Secrets replied, "The fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking comes up in 100 years' time." "You mean to say?" Immortal Sword fell into deep thought and pondered for a moment before shaking his head. "What sort of a chance is that? Given Desolate Marshal's current combat strength, he's enough to become the number 1 of the Dharma characteristic ranking. Furthermore, Desolate Marshal has a Mahayana Patriarch backing him. Given the grandeur of the Dharma characteristic ranking, there's no guarantee that this Patriarch won't appear. At that time, who would dare to touch him?" Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. "According to my calculations, that person from Dragon Burial Valley will definitely not live for more than 100 years. Immortal Sword shook his head. "Even so, the 4 unorthodox groups, Snowdrift Valley, Dipankra Monastery, and some other super sects are on good terms with him. It's impossible for us to kill Desolate Marshal in front of everyone. Previously, their super sects could even claim that Desolate Marshal was a fiend demon and attempt to kill him openly under the guise of slaying demons. But now, that reason has become a joke." Immortal Sword continued, "Furthermore, given Desolate Marshal's capabilities, even conjoint body mighty figures won't be able to stop him if he wanted to escape. Just wait. The chance will definitely come." Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and said meaningfully. Right then, his expression changed. As though he sensed something, he waved his sleeves and the doors of the Dao residence opened as a messenger spirit crane flew in. The messenger crane looked extremely sinister with ghastly green eyes. "One of the 9 races, the Witch race." Immortal Sword frowned slightly. Only the Witch race possessed a spirit crane as such. Heavenly Secrets said something to the spirit crane and returned it. Before long, a few cultivators in green robes and wide hoods arrived at the entrance of Heavenly Secrets' Dao residence. "Elder Wu Xie, it's my honor. Please forgive me for not welcoming you earlier." Heavenly Secrets cupped his fists with a smile. "You're too kind, fellow Daoist Heavenly Secrets." The green-robed cultivator in the lead said slowly. He removed the hood on his head and revealed a skinny, old face. His hair was thin and his eyes were green. "This is Immortal Sword. He was once the titular disciple of Sword Sect and now, he's already at the conjoint body realm. This is Elder Wu Xie of the Witch race." Heavenly Secrets gave a brief introduction of both parties. "I've heard a lot about you. Wuxie smiled gently, and his eyes flickered. Suddenly, he said, "Fellow Taoist Immortal Sword's essence spirit seems to be injured. Elder, you are sharp." Immortal Sword's expression darkened as he said hatefully, "To be honest, I was ambushed by my enemies and my essence spirit was injured." He was not willing to lose face by telling the actual truth that he lost to a Dharma Characteristic Tao Lord in an essence spirit fight. "Elder Wuxie, why are you here?" Heavenly Secrets did not bother to exchange pleasantries with Wuxie and asked straightforwardly. "I want you to help me look for someone," Wuxie said in a deep voice. "There are many secret skills in the witch race and many methods of divining how to locate someone. Why would you look for me?" Heavenly Secrets chuckled without commenting. "I did use the secret skills of the witch race, but I couldn't find him." Wuxie shook his head. "Oh." Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and asked, "What's the background of someone who can't be found even by the secret skills of the witch race?" "To be precise, he's not human." Wuxie flipped his palm and a black scale appeared. "What is this?" Immortal Sword frowned slightly. The black scale emitted an extremely terrifying aura that resembled demonic chi but was different at the same time. Fiend demon? What fiend demon was worthy of the witch race mobilizing such a large force such that they would even seek out Enigma Palace? Sweeping his gaze, Heavenly Secrets received the scale with a grim expression. After staring at it for a while, his expression changed as he exclaimed, "A primordial taboo." Chapter 1285, Great Essence Creation Elixir. Chapter 1285, Great Essence Creation Elixir. Even Immortal Sword could not help but gasp when he heard the words primordial taboo, and his expression changed. It's still alive?" There was a quiver in Immortal Sword's voice. A primordial taboo was unspeakable for any sect or faction. Apart from some super sects and ancient aristocratic families with deep lineages, most of the sects and cultivators had never even heard of it. In the records of those super sects, it was an extremely terrifying existence and could be called the god of massacre of the primordial era. It killed and devoured everything. It could even slay dragons. Its status was even above the 9 races. Legend has it that an earth-shaking battle broke out in the primordial era because the 10,000 races led by the primordial 9 races fought against the primordial taboo. In that battle, countless living beings died. Countless races were wiped out forever. Because of that, the primordial 9 races suffered immense losses as well. That was the reason why the human race was able to take advantage of the situation to fight against and suppress the primordial 9 races later on. If not for that battle of the primordial era, it would have been difficult for the human race to win the ancient war as well. Humans had a deep fear towards the primordial 9 races. After all, they had been enslaved for countless years, and that was a deep-rooted fear. The primordial taboo was an existence even more terrifying than the primordial 9 races. It was easy to imagine the shock Immortal Sword felt when it heard the words primordial taboo. Sensing the fear of Immortal Sword, Wuxie's eyes flashed with mockery. "Fellow Taoist, there's no need to panic overly either. I divine that this thing's cultivation is only at the Dharma Characteristic realm." At that point, Heavenly Secrets' expression softened. It was nothing much if it was only at the Dharma Characteristic realm. As long as enough conjoint body mighty figures were sent out, it could be suppressed. If not, they could even send forth half-martial ancestors. However, Wuxie changed the topic. "If it's given enough time and grows up, at that time, blood will probably flow like rivers in Tianhuang mainland. None of your human super sects will be spared." Heavenly Secrets said in a low voice, "Since it's a primordial taboo, it might be able to sense me using a secret skill to divine its location. It's fine as long as there are leads." Wuxie said coldly, "Don't worry, the witch race is not the only one from the primordial 9 races that will send people for this primordial taboo. The other races will send experts as well. With our races combining our strength, we'll definitely be able to suppress it as long as we can determine its location. Let me try." Heavenly Secrets conjured hand seals and channeled his essence spirit, spreading a divine light that descended on the pitch-black scale in his palm and began to divine. A moment later, he shuddered and could not help but grunt. Amazing! Finally, Heavenly Secrets retracted his smile. Not only did he fail in his divination this time round, that single scale nearly caused a backlash on his essence spirit. Taking a deep breath of air, Heavenly Secrets channeled his secret skill once more. A gray fog shrouded his eyes as he gripped the black scale and continued to divine. Gradually, a hint of blood appeared in the gray fog in Heavenly Secrets' eyes. As time passed by, his body trembled slightly and gradually intensified. Finally, the gray fog in Heavenly Secrets' eyes dispersed as he panted heavily with a pale expression. He released his palm and the black scale fell to the ground. It's in the middle continent. He withdrew a map of the middle continent from his storage bag and panted. I can't divine its exact location. I can only give you a rough area. It's within 500 kilometers of this area. Heavenly Secrets pointed to a sect emblem on the map and said in a deep voice, Elixir Yang Sect. Immortal Sword looked at the map and murmured. All right. The green light in Wu Xie's eyes shone brightly as he said coldly, There's no time to lose. I'll inform the other races right now and move immediately to head here. Heavenly Secrets, you have to follow us and divine its location at all times. Wu Xie said. I can't. Heavenly Secrets shook his head. The divination has already exhausted my mental state. I have to rest for at least a year before I can recover. All right, we'll go first. Wu Xie did not linger and left immediately. Middle Continent, Elixir Yang Sect. Night Spirit, hurry and come take a look. I've refined a great essence creation elixir. In an elixir workshop, Xiaoning pinched an elixir and said joyfully to the cold Night Spirit beside her. A Dharma Characteristic cultivator can advance a minor realm with a single great essence creation elixir. Xiaoning continued, It's a pity that I only managed to create one after refining for such a long time. However, it doesn't matter. I'll continue to refine them slowly. At that time, I'll take one and leave one for Big Brother. Night Spirit, have one too and see if it's effective. Night Spirit lips curled and nodded. All of a sudden, his expression changed slightly as he frowned, seemingly sensing something. Xiaoning was immersed in the joy of her success in refining the great essence creation elixir and did not notice anything unusual about Night Spirit. Xiaoning, I've got something on and have to leave first. Right then, Night Spirit suddenly said, Go on with your work. Just come back earlier. Xiaoning waved it off and smiled. After a long silence, Night Spirit said, This matter is a little troublesome. I might be gone for a longer time. Xiaoning could hear something odd in Night Spirit's tone and asked, How long do you need? I don't know either. Perhaps 10 or 100 years. In any case, you don't have to worry if I don't return, Night Spirit said. Do you need my help? Xiaoning asked gently. It's fine. Night Spirit shook his head and did not continue chatting with Xiaoning. Turning to leave, he disappeared from her sights before long. Is it finally about to begin? Outside Elixir Yang Sect, Night Spirit's expression was cold as he murmured. In a flash, he disappeared into the void like a ghost. At the same time, in the Middle Continent and Bamboo Forest, Su Zimo sighed deeply as he watched Yin Beichen leave. The birth of a true Asura would definitely cause a bloodbath on Tianhuang mainland. None of the people or factions involved in this would be spared. Su Zimo shifted his gaze towards Dao Lord Cloud Rain's corpse and removed his storage bag. As the titular disciple of Cloud Rain sect, Dao Lord Cloud Rain's storage bag might be filled with treasures. Su Zimo opened his storage bag and swept his gaze across. There were many cultivation techniques and secret skills within. However, since they were not orthodox, Su Zimo could not be bothered to cultivate them. There were also some supreme grade and perfect grade dermic weapons within. Su Zimo put everything away. What truly lit up his eyes was an elixir. There was a great essence creation elixir in Dao Lord Cloud Rain's storage bag. Back in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Everyone fell into a hallucination and caught sight of a great essence creation elixir. This was not a hallucination. This was a true ancient elixir. Right now, he was at the mid-stage Dharma Characteristic realm. If he consumed this great essence creation elixir here, he could break through to the late-stage Dharma Characteristic realm swiftly. At that time, his heaven and earth Dharma characteristics would grow once more. Chapter 1286, Martial Dao Furnace. Chapter 1286, Martial Dao Furnace. Pingyang Town. Not long ago, Su Zimo's prime body, his martial Dao true body, had already returned from Ethereal Peak. He had already memorized all the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Ethereal Peak. In the familiar courtyard, the prime body sat beneath the peach blossom tree and could not help but recall that night many years ago. A woman in a blood robe stood here with a hazy moonlight, bringing him into the cultivation world. Everything felt like a lifetime had passed. The prime body gradually closed his eyes. He was prepared to break through from the core formation realm and advance to the next realm. After forming a core, be it the immortal, Buddhist, or demon Daos, they would achieve the same goal through different means. They would make use of the changes in their golden cores to connect to heaven and earth and form essence spirits. It was the same for the martial Dao. His prime body named the next realm the martial spirit realm. The essence spirit of the martial Dao was the martial spirit. It corresponded to the Yin spirit realm of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and the nascent soul realm of the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend cultivation techniques. Of course, his prime body was constantly improving on the martial Dao. According to the Martial Sutra, there was still a difference between his martial spirit and an ordinary essence spirit. The prime body sat motionlessly beneath the peach blossom tree, as though he was petrified. Gradually, the prime body did not even have to breathe. Tao Yao swayed his branches gently. If he had not sensed the life force within the prime body, he would have thought that the prime body had passed away. The prime body was formed from the Dao fruit of the martial Dao. He was the one who created the Martial Sutra and had long cultivated to the 9th transformation of the 9 transformations, Dragon Elephant Force. The prime body had never fought with anyone and nobody knew his combat strength. To put it simply, Su Zimo's body back when he was at the Golden Core realm and cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness could not compare to his prime body in terms of physique and power of blood chi. Nobody, not even the prime body, knew what this martial spirit that was formed by the inner core breaking through the voids would become in the future. This process was not unfamiliar to the prime body. Bang, bang, bang. The prime body's expression was unchanged, and he did not move on the surface. However, an earth-shaking sound echoed from within his body. His inner core charged into the voids continuously. There was a chance of failure in this process. If one's inner core was not strong enough, they would fail the breakthrough. However, for this prime body, nothing could stop his inner core that had cultivated the power of a dragon elephant. Before long, the void barrier in his body was broken. His consciousness appeared. His inner core barged in and fused with the soul in his consciousness, forming a martial spirit. The strange thing was that the martial spirit was not in human form. Instead, it was a ball of purple flames that emitted a shuddering aura. Tao Yao was initially protecting the prime body. However, the moment the prime body conjured his martial spirit, Tao Yao felt his heart skip a beat and transformed into his human form. In a flash, he hid in a corner of the courtyard with a bewildered expression. Even Tao Yao, who was at the Dharma Characteristic realm, felt a sense of fear from the purple flames cultivated by the prime body. A long time later, the purple flames in his consciousness changed continuously and gradually took shape. Although it had the same appearance as Su Zimo, its body burned with a layer of purple flames. True enough, the prime body opened its eyes slowly and nodded. His martial Dao was extremely different from the cultivation path of immortals, Buddhas, and fiends before core formation. Immortals, Buddhas, and fiends cultivated by absorbing heaven and earth spirit chi with their bodies. As for the martial Dao, It viewed its own body as a part of the world and constantly opened up the power within. The prime body deduced that if one could cultivate to the ninth transformation of the martial Tao and advance to the martial spirit realm, there was a high chance that one could possess a power at the beginning of their martial spirit formation. The power was extremely vast and was closely related to the cultivator. It could be flames, weapons, ferocious beasts, or even a part of their bodies. The martial spirit conjured by the prime body was born with the martial spirit fire. Purple. It represented the aura of a saint and emperor. It was supreme. The reason why the prime body condensed the purple martial spirit fire was because he was prepared to view his body as a gigantic furnace in the second half of the Martial Sutra's cultivation technique. In the ancient saying, heaven and earth were the furnaces, all living beings were bronze, yin and yang were charcoal, and creation was manual work. His prime body viewed the martial Tao true body as a furnace. It cultivated all the sutras and fused them all into one body, gathering the strongest flames in the world to create a true supreme martial Tao. The martial spirit fire was the foundation of the martial Tao furnace. The prime body would not have to refine any dharmic weapons in the future. As the furnace of the martial Tao, his physical body was his dharmic weapon. Swoosh! When the martial spirit fire was formed, it had already begun to burn the martial Tao true body. At the same time, the martial spirit fire began smelting all the cultivation techniques and secret skills that Su Zimo had browsed through over the years. Be it the immortal, Buddhist, fiend, or even demon cultivation techniques, they were all smelted by the martial spirit fire. The cultivation techniques of Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery. The Void Thunder Manual. The Sea Calming Manual and Tidal Manual. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. The 30-odd inheritances in the stone statue cemetery. The endless cultivation techniques were all contained by the martial Tao furnace as it tempered, deduced, and comprehended continuously, infusing all the obscurities and essence of those cultivation techniques into the martial Tao true body. The terrifying thing about the martial Tao furnace was that there was no limit to it. As long as the prime body obtained enough cultivation techniques, he could fuse them into the martial Tao furnace and refine them to become a power he could control. In other words, the power of the prime body would increase with every secret skill smelted. Furthermore, under the continuous refinement of the martial spirit fire, his martial Tao true body would become stronger, more terrifying, and limitless. What was even more frightening was that the prime body was only in control of a single martial spirit fire right now. As his mastery of flames increased, the might of the martial Tao furnace would naturally increase as well. Of course, not all flames were qualified to be used to burn the martial Tao furnace. To smelt 100 sutras and burn the martial Tao furnace to forge the martial Tao true body, one had to be the strongest flame in the world. The martial spirit fire was merely the first. Now that the path of cultivation was determined, the prime body heaved a sigh of relief and continued cultivating. The martial Tao furnace had just been formed and was fragile and weak. It required a long time to smelt the sutras and dharmic arts. At the same time, the Green Lotus true body had already rushed back to the north region from the middle continent. Su Zimo was finally relieved when he sensed the condition of his prime body. At that moment, Su Zimo had already consumed the great essence creation elixir, and his cultivation realm had climbed to the late-stage Dharma Characteristic realm. With his return to the north region this time round, he was prepared to enter seclusion in Ethereal Peak. Although this trip to the middle continent was short, he had gained quite a bit from the consecutive battles. He was prepared to break through to the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm as soon as possible with this seclusion. Right now, his 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics had already grown to a height of 89 feet. He was only a step away from a supreme Dharma characteristic as well. Of course, a breakthrough to the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm was only one of his motives for his seclusion this time round. Su Zimo had another question. Was a 90 feet supreme Dharma characteristic truly the limit? Chapter 1287, Death of a Patriarch. Chapter 1287, Death of a Patriarch. The cultivation world was not exactly peaceful during this period of time. The Grand Primordium ancient temple in the Middle Continent, as well as the death of Dao Lord Cloudrain and a conjoint body mighty figure of Sword Sect, caused quite a stir. After Immortal Sword returned to Sword Sect, he released the news that Dao Lord Cloudrain died in the hands of Desolate Marshal. There were naturally only benefits for Immortal Sword if he could sow grudges between Sword Sect and Desolate Marshal. This news caused quite a stir in the cultivation world. Another titular disciple had died in the hands of Desolate Marshal. Before long, more news regarding Dao Lord Desolate Marshal spread. It was no longer a secret that Desolate Marshal had formed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Suzimo did not take those news to heart. After returning to Ethereal Peak, he entered a long period of seclusion cultivation. Cultivation was endless, and in the blink of an eye, 97 years had passed. This day, a deafening bang sounded from one of Ethereal Peak's cave abodes. Boom! A terrifying aura burst forth, and Ethereal Peak trembled continuously as countless rocks rolled down. Even the cultivators in seclusion were alarmed and came out one after another. Its young master. Standing in midair, Nianqi looked at the cave abode. Before long, the skies of Ethereal Peak were filled with people densely. There were people from the Foundation establishment to Dharma Characteristic realm. Could Elder Desolate Marshal have broken through again? How many years has it been? Elder Desolate Marshal's talent is way too terrifying. I've been stuck at the late-stage Dharma Characteristic realm for 1,000 years, but I haven't improved at all. How can you compare to Elder Desolate Marshal? In Ethereal Peak, Suzimo had long been designated as an elder by the old immortal Crane. Most of the cultivators who joined Ethereal Peak came because they had heard of the many legends of Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Furthermore, Suzimo had once spread half of the Martial Sutra throughout the entire world. Desolate Marshal was the most respected character among everyone who cultivated the martial Dao. It was Desolate Marshal who gave them, mortals without spirit roots, a chance to break free from the shackles of fate. They could no longer be threatened by fiend demons or trampled by cultivators. The vibration lasted for a long time before subsiding. A moment later, a figure appeared at the entrance of the cave abode. Green robes and black hair. It was Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Suzimo, congratulations. Congratulations. In midair, many Ethereal Peak cultivators cupped their fists in congratulation. Suzimo nodded with a smile. Young Master, the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking is about to begin soon. You've already broken through to the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm, and you'll definitely be the top of the Dharma Characteristic ranking. Nianqi smiled. She possessed the bloodline of the god race and cultivated at an extremely fast speed. Right now, she was already at the late-stage Dharma Characteristic realm and was only half a step away from perfected Dharma Characteristic. The fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking? Suzimo muttered softly. Suddenly, he sensed something and his expression changed as he looked to the west. His expression changed as he opened his mouth slightly with a hint of pain and reluctance in his eyes. What's wrong, young master? Sensing the change in Suzimo's expression, Nianqi asked softly. Sigh. Suzimo sighed. I'll be making a trip to the Dragon Burial Valley. Before his sentence was finished, he transformed into a golden streak of light and vanished above Ethereal Peak. Bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Descending, Suzimo arrived before the old temple and pushed open the battered temple door. Monk Yuan Bei sat in a lotus position facing the front of the hall and looked at Suzimo with a benevolent smile. You're here. Master. With a sorrowful expression, Suzimo strode forward and knelt before Monk Yuan Bei. Child, there's no need for that. Reaching out with his skinny palm, Monk Yuan Bei caressed Suzimo's forehead and said gently, everyone dies. I've lived for close to 100,000 years and have seen and experienced too much. It's enough. Monk Yuan Bei was at the end of his lifespan. Master, look, the Mingwang prayer beads are complete. Suzimo removed the complete Mingwang prayer beads hurriedly and placed it in front of Monk Yuan Bei. That's great. Monk Yuan Bei nodded with a relieved expression. There were no regrets, reluctance, or longing in Monk Yuan Bei's eyes. They were calm as water. I heard that you've already formed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. How strong are they? Have you cultivated a supreme Dharma characteristic yet? Remember to visit Mingzhan at Dipankara Monastery in the South region if you have the chance. I wonder how he's doing. Monk Yuan Bei chatted with Su Zimo about trivial matters without any hint of melancholy. Gradually, he went silent. The earth did not quake, nor were there any phenomena. Monk Yuan Bei passed away in peace. He still had a benevolent and warm smile on his face. However, his wise eyes would never open again. Although this renowned patriarch had a lifespan of 100,000 years, he still could not escape the sands of time and passed away here. Swoosh! The sound of chains sounded from the backyard. A tall and mighty figure walked over with scarlet hair that burned like flames. The red-headed ghost did not appear before Monk Yuan Bei's passing. It was not because the red-headed ghost had any resentment towards Monk Yuan Bei. On the contrary, the red-headed ghost and Monk Yuan Bei had a deep relationship. Su Zimo understood that the red-headed ghost merely did not wish to see Monk Yuan Bei pass away personally and experience that sadness of parting. Now that the old monk is gone, it's time for me to leave as well. The red-headed ghost did not make a fuss and sighed in disappointment. In truth, the chains on his body had long shattered, and he was not the culprit behind the catastrophe of Great Qian. He could have left a long time ago. However, he chose to remain here until Monk Yuan Bei passed away. Let's bury him here, the red-headed ghost said. Su Zimo nodded and carried Monk Yuan Bei's corpse to the cemetery at the back of the hall to bury the latter. He placed all the ancient books in the old temple into his storage bag, prepared to bring them back to Ethereal Peak. The skies above the Dragon Burial Valley. You're going to return to the dragon race? Su Zimo asked. The red-headed ghost nodded. Without my protection, you have to be careful in the future and not be reckless. Time to go. The red-headed ghost waved it off and turned to leave. All of a sudden, he frowned slightly and turned around slowly, gazing at the void not far away with a slightly focused and pensive expression. What's wrong? Su Zimo asked instinctively. Nothing much. I seem to have sensed something earlier on. The red-headed ghost shook his head and murmured, I might be neurotic after staying at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley for too long. With that, he turned and left, disappearing above the Dragon Burial Valley before long. Su Zimo stood at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley for a long time before sighing deeply and turning to leave. Not long after he left, the void not far away from the Dragon Burial Valley distorted and a figure appeared. The red-headed ghost was right. There was indeed someone there. However, that person even managed to avoid his detection. The person wore a wide white robe and his black hair covered most of his face, revealing only one eye. He looked at the Dragon Burial Valley with a conflicted expression. After standing for a long time, the figure bowed deeply in the direction of the Dragon Burial Valley and turned to leave as well. Chapter 1288, Primordial 6 Races. Chapter 1288, Primordial 6 Races. West region of Tianhuang mainland. Everywhere that can be seen, the desert was vast and uninhabited. Occasionally, there would be sand dunes without any signs of life. In the cultivation world, there were many sections. Most of them were located in the Middle Continent, East region, North region, and South region. However, very few cultivators set up their sects in the West region. In the depths of the West region, in a desert in the extreme west, hundreds of figures stood with powerful auras. Among them, there were even dozens of figures whose auras fused with the entire world. Although their auras varied individually, they exuded a terrifying might. The dozens of figures were all conjoint body mighty figures. The others were also Dharma Characteristic Dao Lords. The most terrifying thing was that most of the hundreds of figures were foreign living beings. Some of them were ugly and had green faces and bared fangs. Their noses were facing the skies, and their fingers and toes had sharp nails that were curved and shone coldly. The living beings were tall and had black skin. They had gigantic pitch-black meat wings on their backs that were dozens of feet wide when spread open. None of those living beings were human. They were more like malevolent ghosts from hell. It was one of the primordial 9 races, the Rakshasa race. This was a race that was even more terrifying than the malevolent ghosts of hell. Although some of them were in human form, they wore green robes and had ghastly green eyes. They exuded a sinister aura that looked extremely eerie. One of the primordial 9 races, the witch race. Some of them were neither human nor demon and looked like plants that took root in the depths of the desert, waving dozens of scarlet vines. Every single vine had a blood-colored gourd. The most terrifying thing was that at the top of the vines was a human face. It had no eyes and nose, only a gigantic mouth with sharp fangs that intertwined with one another and shone with a cold glint. Any living being that was devoured would be minced instantly. It was one of the primordial 9 races, the bloodvine race. There were others that resembled crows. However, they were extremely massive with golden feathers that burned with similarly colored flames and 3 legs beneath them. The void around them were distorted from the heat. One of the primordial 9 races, the golden crow race. There were also some cultivators with golden hair and blue eyes. The men were handsome and tall while the women were graceful and charming. It was clear that they were from the god race. Some other figures were similar to humans. However, there was a blood scar on their foreheads that resembled an eye. One of the primordial 9 races, the heavenly eye race. Among the hundreds of figures, 6 of the primordial 9 races arrived. The witch, Rakshasa, god, golden crow, bloodvine, and heavenly eye races. Ever since the ancient war, the primordial 9 races resided in a corner and rarely set foot in Tianhuang mainland. They had never made such a huge move. Now, 6 of them had all appeared, and the weakest were Dharma Characteristics with dozens of conjoint body mighty figures among them. The 6 races had activated such a massive formation just for a terrifying living being sprawled on the ground not far away. The living being was 100 feet tall and was pitch black with scales all over its body. However, its tail was purple and its tailbone was sharp, as though it could penetrate everything. If Suzimo was here, he would definitely recognize that this was Night Spirit in his true form. At that moment, Night Spirit's aura was weak and he was filled with injuries all over. He was already unconscious and the purple flames beneath his feet had already extinguished. Right now, Night Spirit was only at the Dharma Characteristic realm and could kill conjoint body mighty figures without even transforming into his true form. In a one-on-one fight, he could even kill people of the primordial 9 races in his true form. However, no matter how strong Night Spirit was, he could not defend against the encirclement of so many ferocious races. All these years, he fought and escaped while hiding everywhere. In the end, he was suppressed here by the experts of the 6 races. It's all thanks to your collaboration that we're able to capture that beast this time round. Wuxia looked around and nodded to express his gratitude. This beast can really escape. A conjoint body Rakshasa named Feng Tian cursed with a hateful expression. It's been more than 90 years since we started attacking him. As expected of a taboo race. Over the years, more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of our 6 races have died to this beast. A god race being harumphed coldly with killing intent in his eyes. This time round, the 6 races sent experts to kill Night Spirit and they only succeeded today. They had also paid an extremely high price all these years. More than 10 conjoint body mighty figures of the 6 races had died in the hands of Night Spirit. There were even more than 100 Dharma Characteristic Dao Lords. Third Prince, you came all the way from the East Sea Penglai to assist us in killing this fiend. You're truly much stronger than the Dragon, Barbarian, and Kuran races. Wuxia looked at a 3D golden crow not far away and nodded. Well said, well said. The third prince of the Golden Crow transformed into his human form and was a handsome young man. The fact that this beast is still alive is a huge threat to the primordial 9 races. No one can stay out of it. What a pity. Wuxia sneered. The dragon, barbarian, and Kuran races don't think that way. They chose to stand by idly. The dragon race looks strong on the surface, but they're weak on the inside. The barbarian race is merely a bunch of fools with strong limbs and simple minds. As for the Kuan race, Fufu, they must be scared silly after many of them were killed by this beast in the Primordial War. A heavenly eye race being said coldly. Among the group of living beings, there was a human with a wide Daoist robe, a Confucian crown on his head, and a folding fan in his hands. There was a faint, mysterious smile on that person's face the entire time. Even when he stood together with the experts of the Primordial 9 races, his aura was not inferior. He was Heavenly Secrets of Enigma Palace. After exchanging pleasantries with the Golden Crow Third Prince and the others, Wuxia turned around and nodded at Heavenly Secrets. Of course, it's all thanks to Heavenly Secrets' divination that we're able to hold this beast here. The Primordial 9 races had an innate sense of superiority towards humans. After all, humans were born weak and were once the lowest-leveled race that they had enslaved through history. Furthermore, an ancient war broke out between both parties. Although the 6 races relied on Heavenly Secrets' divination to hunt down Night Spirit all these years, most of them did not take Heavenly Secrets seriously. Even as Wuxia expressed gratitude to Heavenly Secrets, the other races had cold expressions and did not react. "It's nothing much," Heavenly Secrets said indifferently. "This beast is sharp and alert. I took a gamble in the end as well, guessing that there was a high chance it would escape to that direction." Heavenly Secrets pointed to the west. That was the extreme west. From afar, one could see rows of mountain ranges that towered into the clouds. If one focused their gaze, they would vaguely see that the mountain range was filled with endless corpses. Some of the corpses were not rotten and retained their original forms. Their bodies were long and more than 10,000 feet long. Lying on the mountain range, they looked like crouching dragons. To be precise, those were dragon skeletons. A dragon skeleton that was more than 10,000 feet long. A Dharma Characteristic dragon was only dozens of feet tall. What about a dragon skeleton that was 10,000 feet long? Chapter 1289, Scheme. Chapter 1289, Scheme. Some of the corpses were in the shape of birds with wings that were more than 1,000 feet long. There were 3 legs beneath them that were golden. The Golden Crow Third Prince's face turned paler when he caught sight of those corpses. In the endless mountain range, there were all sorts of corpses. Apart from the Primordial 9 races, there were countless unknown living beings. A torrential malevolent aura emanated from that side, and one would jitter with a single glance. The experts of the 6 races were prideful. However, their auras weakened when they looked in that direction as they averted their gazes with fearful expressions. There were 9 forbidden grounds in Tianhuang mainland that humans did not dare to step foot into. However, the endless mountain range in the distance was the forbidden ground of the Primordial 9 races. Extreme west, Kunlun Ruins. A god race being named Han Ling remarked with lingering fear, "It's lucky that we stopped that beast in advance. If he had escaped there, we might not have been able to capture him." Wu Xia's expression was terrible as well as he urged, "Let's go. It's better for us to leave this place as soon as possible." Although there was still a long way to go before they arrived at the Kunlun ruins, the 6 races were already feeling uncomfortable. How should we deal with this beast? Should we kill it directly? The Rakshasa, Feng Tian, revealed his bloodthirsty fangs and said murderously. A heavenly eye race being nodded. "I think that's fine. Killing him will eliminate all future troubles, lest anything unexpected happens." "No, we can't." A blood vine on the ground transformed into a human and shook its head resolutely. "The blood of this beast contains immense power. If we were to kill it, the blood would go stale and the power within would weaken too much." "That's right." God Hanling nodded. "This beast is filled with treasures from head to toe. It's a little hasty to kill him just like that. There's no way he can break free after I trap him with the god race's heavenly god lock. At that time, we'll capture him back alive and discuss how we should deal with him." "Sure." Wu Xie's eyes flickered as he nodded in agreement. Every single item on Night Spirit's body, be it scales, fangs, claws, or blood, were utmost treasures of the universe. The 6 races had their own agendas and would naturally not let a single race possess them all. God Hanling slapped his storage bag and withdrew a shimmering golden chain. There were 5 diamond iron hoops on the chains, and sharp spikes were embedded in the inner circle of the hoops. There were reverse hooks that intertwined extremely sharply. The pupils of Wu Xie and the others constricted slightly when they saw the Heavenly Godlock. The Heavenly Godlock was the most famous weapon of the God race, and even the Primordial 9 races would not be able to break free from it. The spikes on the Heavenly Godlock's iron hoops could penetrate flesh with ease and were embedded deeply. Furthermore, the spikes were hollow and could suck blood continuously, causing living beings trapped by the Heavenly Godlock to never recover their blood chi. The moment one's blood chi recovered, it would be sucked in by the spikes on the iron hoops. God Hanling threw the Heavenly Godlock in his hands towards Night Spirit. Splash! The Heavenly Godlock descended and coiled around Night Spirit instantly. The immense godly power augmented and restricted Night Spirit's body as his true form dissipated and took on human form. Snap! Snap! The 5 iron hoops locked Night Spirit's arms, legs, and neck instantly, piercing deeply into his flesh. Night Spirit grunted and frowned with a pained expression. Ha 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 ha. Rakshasa Feng Tian was excited and burst into laughter. Little beast, let's see how you can maintain your cockiness. Let's see how you can escape now. Right then, Heavenly Secrets' expression changed when he saw Night Spirit in human form, and he murmured softly, "It's him? Why, you've seen him before?" Noticing the change in Heavenly Secrets' expression, Wu Xie turned and asked. Heavenly Secrets nodded. His name is Night Spirit, and he has appeared many times in the cultivation world with terrifying combat strength. However, he has never revealed his true form. He even has a bosom friend, and the cultivation world once thought that he was the latter's spirit beast. That's impossible. A Heavenly Eye race being shook his head. Who could have subdued the Taboo race? Heavenly Secrets looked at everyone from the Rakshasa and God race and smiled mysteriously. Back in the intermediate ancient battlefield, he even joined forces with that man and buried both your races in Myriad Phenomenon City. Rakshasa Feng Tian's expression changed as he barked coldly. It's that man. What's his name again? Dao Lord Desolate Marshal? Heavenly Secrets said slowly. Right now, he created the martial Dao and allowed mortals without spirit roots to cultivate as well. His combat strength is terrifying, and he killed many titular disciples of Super Sex and condensed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. He's extremely famous. 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics? Everyone from the 6 races frowned. The fact that Su Zimo had conjured 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics caused a huge stir in the cultivation world. However, the 6 races were merely surprised. For example, Wu Xie, God Hanling, and Rakshasa Feng Tian were all conjoint body mighty figures. They did not even care if Su Zimo could conjure 10 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics, let alone 3. How strong were conjoint body mighty figures of the 6 races? Even half-martial ancestors of the human race would not dare to provoke them. Where is he now? Rakshasa Feng Tian asked murderously. I'll make a move to kill that lad right now. Heavenly Secrets shook his head. Desolate Marshal has a Mahayana Patriarch backing him. You might not be able to hurt him if you head over now. Furthermore, this person's movement technique is extremely fast. It'll be difficult to kill him if he escapes with all his might. No matter how fast he is, he can't be faster than us Rakshasas. Rakshasa Feng Tian harumphed coldly. Although that was what he claimed, he did not persist. While he was fearless against half-martial ancestors, he was still wary of Mahayana patriarchs. At the Mahayana realm, one would have comprehended divine powers. That sort of power was not something conjoint bodies can fight against. Heavenly Secrets continued. Furthermore, if Desolate Marshal is alarmed and goes into hiding, I won't be able to divine his location. You can't divine it. Wu Xie frowned. Even for the taboo race, heavenly secrets could divine a rough area. Yet, he was unable to divine a single puny human. Heavenly secrets had a calm expression. An expert once altered desolate Marshall's fate. He's shrouded by a layer of fog, and I can't divine him. What should we do then? Rakshasa Feng Tian said coldly, Desolate Marshall is someone I definitely have to kill. That's right. That lad once killed my clansman. I won't let him off either. The god Hanling said slowly as well. The Golden Crow third prince smiled sinisterly. You guys have managed to intrigue me. I'm keen on meeting this desolate Marshall. Fellow Taoist Heavenly Secrets, do you have any grand plan? Wu Xie asked. It can't be considered a grand plan, merely an open scheme. Heavenly Secrets pointed at Night Spirit not far away and smiled. The once-in-a-thousand-year fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking is about to begin. At that time, Desolate Marshall will definitely appear despite knowing that there's danger if we use this beast as bait. Given Desolate Marshall's character, he'll definitely try and save that beast. At that time, countless sects and factions will naturally attack to kill him. Everyone, all we have to do is wait by the sidelines and enjoy the show. The Golden Crow third prince clapped and laughed. Interesting, interesting. Chapter 1290, Taboo Race. Chapter 1290, Taboo Race. Nothing will go wrong, right? A heavenly eye race being frowned with a cold expression. Absolutely impossible. God Han Ling waved it off and declared proudly, This heavenly godlock was given to me by an elder of the god race. Even a Dharma treasure can't damage it. The weapons used by Mahayana patriarchs were infused with the power of divine powers and could be called Dharma treasures. Heavenly Secrets nodded as well. Everyone, don't worry. The primordial 9 races are not the only ones concerned about the birth of this taboo. Our human race won't let it off either. Taboos are the enemies of the 10,000 races. At that time, whoever dares to protect them will have to die with them. Although Heavenly Secret said that with a smile, there was a cold killing intent. Ethereal Peak. Ever since Monk Yuan Bei passed away in meditation, Su Zimo had returned to this place. However, he felt uneasy recently, as though something big was about to happen. It was an instinct and definitely not a coincidence. However, he had no clue as to what it was. This day, Su Zimo was meditating in his cave abode when his heart skipped a beat. Waving his sleeves, the door to his cave abode opened slowly and a messenger spirit crane flew in. Su Zimo received it. Xiaoning? The spirit crane gave off a familiar aura. It was Xiaoning. Brother, I've missed you. How have you been recently? The fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking is about to begin. Are you going to join? We'll be able to meet then. At that point, Su Zimo smiled and continued reading. Have you seen Night Spirit all these years? 90 years ago, he suddenly left my side and disappeared. He hasn't returned since. The day he left, he had a strange expression as though something was amiss. If he's with you, please reply and let me know. At that point, Su Zimo fell into deep thought. Night Spirit was gone. Under normal circumstances, given Night Spirit's combat strength, it was nothing much for him to be missing for 100 years. There was probably nobody in Tianhuang mainland who could injure him. Even if he could not defeat them, he could escape. What could have happened to Night Spirit? Could Night Spirit's background have been exposed? Immediately, Su Zimo shook his head. Night Spirit was so cautious, and even in front of Su Zimo, he merely revealed his true form once. How could he have been exposed? Right then, another spirit crane flew in from outside the cave abode. Su Zimo received it and took a look. This spirit crane was from Lin Xuanji. Don't go for the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking. Don't go. There was not much information on the spirit crane, and there were only a few words. It was a clear warning. Furthermore, it seemed like it was written in a hurry. Could the super sects have deduced that my master has passed away and are prepared to join forces to kill me in the Dharma Characteristic ranking? Su Zimo quickly thought of that possibility. All these years, The reason why Glass Palace, Zephyr Thunder Palace, and Sword Sect endured him was because they were wary of Monk Yuan Bei. Now that Monk Yuan Bei had passed away, it was only logical that those super sects were tempted. Su Zimo sneered internally. Since that was the case, he would not take part in the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking. The danger of the Dharma Characteristic ranking this time round was definitely unimaginable if it could prompt Lin Xuanji into sending such a reminder. Just as he was pondering, a figure descended from outside the door. It was Nian Qi. "Young master, there's news of the Dharma Characteristic ranking." She came to Su Zimo's side. It's said that the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking this time round is still in the Middle Continent. However, I heard that it's different from the past. Apart from some specified rewards, the 72 cultivators on the Dharma Characteristic ranking also have the chance to drink Taboo blood. Taboo blood? Su Zimo asked casually without thinking too much. Nian Qi shook her head. "I don't know either. I think Enigma Palace joined forces with some super sects and captured an extremely terrifying taboo living being of the Primordial era. It's said that every single drop of blood from this taboo contains an unimaginable power." Su Zimo's expression changed. At the same time, in the Dragonbone Valley, the dragon true body that was in seclusion was awakened by a series of hurried knocks. Su Zimo was already the young master of the dragon race and reigned over the 5 lineages. Unless there was something extremely pressing, the dragon race would definitely not disturb him. Without hesitation, he got up and left the dragon lair. "Young master, the elders invited you for a meeting in the Grand Hall." An illumination dragon bowed respectfully. Su Zimo nodded and leaped towards the Grand Hall in the central region. In the past few years of seclusion cultivation, his dragon true body cultivated at an extremely fast speed with the help of the 3 innate divine powers and was already at the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm. Of course, breaking through from the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm to the conjoint body realm required not only an opportunity, but also a long period of consolidation. Su Zimo arrived at the meeting hall and looked up. There were more than 10 elders sitting in the hall. Not only were the Grand Elders of the Illumination Dragon lineage present, the Grand Elders of the other 4 lineages were present as well. "What's with the crowd?" Su Zimo lamented internally. What happened to alarm so many elders? "Long Imo, have a seat." The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder waved his hand, indicating for Su Zimo to sit for the meeting. As the young master of the dragon race, his status was on par with the elders present, and was even above some ordinary dragon elders. "The reason we called for you here today is to inform you of something," the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said. "A taboo of the Primordial era has a remnant bloodline alive. Furthermore, it was captured alive by 6 of the Primordial 9 races." When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. The first thing that came to mind was Night Spirit. However, he maintained his composure and took a deep breath. "Grand Elder, please explain what a taboo it is." The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder reminisced and said slowly, "In the Primordial era, the 10,000 races reigned and the hierarchy was strict. It was even crueler than now. Our Primordial 9 races reigned over Tianhuang mainland back in the Primordial era. However, there's another type of living being above us, the Taboo race." True enough, Night Spirit's bloodline was indeed stronger and more terrifying than the Primordial 9 races. It was no wonder why Night Spirit dared to eat the dragon egg the moment he entered the Dragonbone Valley and did not hesitate at all. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder continued. "The Taboo race is extremely special and the chances of them being born are extremely low. Their bloodlines are rare and only 1 or 2 exist in each generation. Among the taboos we currently know is the Dragon Phoenix. The Dragon Phoenix does not only possess the bloodline of the dragon race, it also possesses the bloodline of the Divine Phoenix. Extremely strong with torrential combat strength, it's a true taboo of the Primordial era." At that point, the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder looked at Su Zimo deeply. He continued after a brief pause, "The Kuan Peng is also a taboo. Of the Primordial 9 races, one of them is the Kuran race. The Kuran Peng race is much stronger than the Kuran race. It can turn into fish and devour the oceans for thousands of kilometers, as well as turn into a bird that possesses the power of extreme yin and yang as it soars through the world. This was the first time Suzimo had heard of some of these things. He did not interrupt and continued listening. Although Night Spirit was from a taboo race, he was definitely not a dragon phoenix or Kurunpong. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said slowly, "There's another lineage of the taboo race known as the Ho." Chapter 1291, Decision. Chapter 1291, Decision. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, "Ho, the god of massacre of the Primordial era, stood at the top of all living beings, and the Primordial 9 races were its food. It was no wonder why he was referred to as a taboo by the Primordial 9 races." Suzimo lamented internally, "There's no mistake. Night Spirit should be a Ho." It stood to reason why Night Spirit did not like to eat any spirit beasts that Monkey and the others captured back when he had just hatched. Instead, he displayed an unprecedented interest when he came to the Dragon Bone Valley and saw a dragon egg. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder continued, "Of course, because the 3 taboos are rare, there isn't a colony of them, and they naturally don't have the strength and energy to rule over Tianhuang mainland." Suzimo nodded. In the Primordial era, the Primordial 9 races were still the ones who ruled over Tianhuang mainland. However, there were 3 great taboo living beings above the Primordial 9 races that possessed the power to kill them. What was with that battle in the Primordial era? Suzimo asked. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder had a conflicted expression. The Primordial era was the most glorious era of Tianhuang mainland, and the 3 major taboos existed. However, the Dragon Phoenix has a blood relation with the dragon race and is naturally closer to the dragon race. The Kurunpong is closer to the current race as well. The Ho is the only one that is always alone and aloof, distant from any single race. The Ho was savage and killed the Primordial 9 races without any reservations. Finally, the Ho incurred the wrath of the Dragon Phoenix and Kurunpong, who then brought the Primordial 9 races to fight against it. The battle was extremely tragic and corpses were strewn everywhere like mountains. Countless living beings of the Primordial 9 races were killed, and almost all the 10,000 races were implicated. Not many of them survived. Suzimo was silent. There was indeed a reason why House were called taboos. An existence like that possessed the power to destroy the 10,000 races, who wouldn't be afraid. Even with the Dragon Phoenix and Kurunpong, the Primordial 9 races suffered immense losses. It was obvious how tragic that battle was. There was nothing right or wrong about that battle. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder lamented as well. Later on, because of that battle, the 2 taboos, the Dragon Phoenix and Kurunpong, were severely injured as well. They did not manage to transcend the tribulations to become immortals and died after expending their lifespans. The Dragon Phoenix was filled with regrets before it died. The Blue Dragon Grand Elder nodded. "That's precisely the reason why we hesitated for a long time before deciding not to join the hunt when we heard that the bloodline of a Ho had appeared. However, even without our participation in the encirclement, the Ho did not manage to escape and was captured by the 6 races that went." Pondering for a moment, Suzimo said in a seemingly casual manner, "If we're able to save that Ho this time round, he won't have any feud with the dragon race after he grows up." "Impossible," the Blue Dragon Grand Elder said resolutely. The other Dragon Elders shook their heads as well. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, "The Primordial 9 races and the 10,000 races possess an innate fear towards taboo living beings. If their identities and bloodlines are exposed before they grow, there's only a single outcome for them: death. The Primordial 9 races, the 10,000 races of Tianhuang mainland and human cultivators, will never let a single taboo grow again. The fact that the dragon race did not attack has already incurred the wrath of the other races. If we dare to try and save this taboo now, the other races will definitely be enraged and turn on us. It'll be a calamity that might lead to extermination. Anyone who harbors any motives about this taboo at a moment like this will have to die." Suzimo was silent. Actually, what he said earlier was to test the reaction of the dragon race. Initially, he was wondering if he could save Night Spirit with the help of the dragon race. Looking at the reactions of the elders of the dragon race right now, that was impossible. Not only that, if he revealed any intention of saving Night Spirit, all the elders of the dragon race would definitely dissuade him and even detain him in the Dragon Bone Valley. At that thought, Suzimo went silent. No matter what others thought or what Taboo Night Spirit was, he had to head to the Middle Continent and do everything he could to save Night Spirit. At the same time, his Dragon True Body sensed the news from his Green Lotus True Body. The two true bodies were telepathic and made a decision almost instantly. The Martial Dao True Body had just entered the Martial Spirit realm and was equivalent to a nascent soul. There was no need to alarm it because its strength was insufficient. This time round, his Dragon True Body and Green Lotus True Body had to move together. This trip to the Middle Continent would definitely be filled with unprecedented dangers for Suzimo. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would most likely die. Some super sects bore grudges with him to begin with. If he dared to save Night Spirit despite the universal condemnation, it would be equivalent to pushing himself to a dead end and making the entire world his enemy. Even so, Suzimo did not hesitate at all. To him, Night Spirit was not a primordial taboo. That was his sworn brother and family who had followed him for many years. He would definitely not sit idly by the sidelines. He would not hesitate even if the entire world was his enemy. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder said, "We called you here today not because of this taboo, but because we want to remind you of something." "What?" Suzimo asked. The Grand Elders of the 5 lineages exchanged glances before the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder turned to Suzimo and said slowly, "We have a hunch that there's a high chance you might grow into another taboo, the Dragon Phoenix." Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. However, he quickly came to a realization. He had the bloodline of a dragon and the divine phoenix bone within his body. If the two bloodlines were to fuse, there was a chance that he could become a new taboo, the Dragon Phoenix. Back when you underwent the ancestral dragon's baptism and awakened your innate divine powers, many phenomenons appeared. The only person who could intimidate the ancestral dragon and defeat the bloodline of a 5-clawed divine dragon is probably a Dragon Phoenix. The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder sighed immediately. "Of course, this might require an opportunity. I don't know either. After all, you can't even conjure a complete dragon body right now." The Blue Dragon Grand Elder said, "If you're able to become a Dragon Phoenix in the future, you must be careful not to expose your bloodline and identity before you advance to the Ancestor realm. Otherwise, you will end up with the same outcome as this hoe. At that time, even the dragon race won't be able to protect you." Suzimo nodded. Turning into a Dragon Phoenix was way too far for him right now. He might not be able to wait till then either. In this Dharma Characteristic ranking competition, the Dragon True Body and Green Lotus True Body were not facing Dharma Characteristic paragons, but all the sects, factions, and 6 primordial races. It was also possible for the 2 true bodies to die on the spot. This time round, it was clear that the other party had set a trap. Not only did they want to kill Night Spirit, they wanted to kill him as well. Who knew what sort of a trap they were setting up? The only unknown variable that was advantageous for Suzimo was probably his Dragon True Body. Suddenly, Suzimo said, "I intend to experience the Dharma Characteristic ranking this time round personally." What for?" The Illumination Dragon Grand Elder frowned and was instantly alarmed. Suzimo said, "I haven't seen what the 3 great taboos look like. This is a rare opportunity. How can I miss it?" "Elders, don't worry. I'll hide my identity and watch the show from the side. There won't be any danger." Chapter 1292, Killing Intent. Chapter 1292, Killing Intent. Middle Continent, Heaven and Earth Valley. The name of Heaven and Earth meant that the valley was special. The Heaven and Earth Dharma Characteristic ranking that was held once every 1,000 years would be held in this valley. The valley was extremely vast and spanned thousands of kilometers. When it was time, Dharma Characteristic paragons from all over Tianhuang mainland would gather here to fight for the 72 spots on the Dharma Characteristic ranking. Being listed on the Dharma Characteristic ranking was not only for honor, there were also huge rewards. Similar to the Phenomenon ranking, the Dharma Characteristic ranking was hosted by Enigma Palace. As the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking approached, the number of cultivators in the vicinity of Heaven and Earth Valley increased, and it became livelier. I heard that Fairy Luo Shui of Snowdrift Valley obtained an ancient inheritance and formed the Ice Spirit Dermic body. She has a chance of making it to the top 10 of the Dharma Characteristic ranking. Peng Yu of Overlord Palace is not weak either after condensing the Ten Yama body that has been lost for many years. I heard that the Demoness of Pure Maiden Sect obtained an ancient inheritance in the Dao Inheritance ground and condensed a Mystic Maiden Dermic body. Although she's not at the perfected Dharma Characteristic realm right now, her combat strength is shocking. In my opinion, there's no doubt about who will be the top of the Dharma Characteristic ranking this time round. I heard that Dao Lord Desolate Marshal has condensed 3 Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics that are 87 feet tall. He's definitely the top of the Dharma Characteristic ranking. Indeed, I don't think anyone can compare to Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Before the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking began, many cultivators were already discussing. By the way, do you guys know what that primordial taboo is? I'm not sure. It seems to be an extremely terrifying living being from the primordial era that's comparable to the primordial 9 races. That's amazing. I heard that it took quite a bit of effort to capture that taboo alive. Look, the cultivators of Sword Sect are here. Some cultivators pointed into the distance and exclaimed. Sword Sect is really early this time round. As time passed, various major sects, factions, and super sects appeared one after another and descended in Heaven and Earth Valley. This time round, more than 10 ethereal peak cultivators arrived in the Middle Continent under the lead of the old immortal Crane. In Ethereal Peak, Nian Qi had the highest chance of fighting for a spot on the Dharma Characteristic ranking. Young Master left long ago. Why hasn't he appeared yet? The moment Nian Qi arrived at Heaven and Earth Valley, she searched everywhere but could not find Su Zimo. He must be delayed by something, don't worry. The old immortal Crane smiled. Before long, cultivators of the 4 unorthodox groups arrived. For the Dharma Characteristic ranking this time round, some super sects would be led by conjoint body mighty figures to lead their disciples. It was the same for the 4 unorthodox groups. Right at the front were 4 conjoint body mighty figures. The most prominent person was a middle-aged man in scarlet robes from 100 Refinement Sect. He had a dignified appearance and his eyes were bright, as though they were burning with flames. Although this mighty figure was only at the early stage conjoint body realm, his aura overwhelmed most of the conjoint body mighty figures present. This was the reborn Extreme Fire. Shangguanzi of Thousand Crane Sect stood beside Extreme Fire, looking extremely close to him. Behind her was the titular disciple of Thousand Crane Sect, Fairy Thousand Crane. That was Long Ro who left Ethereal Peak. Xiaoning and Ji Chengtian of Elixir Yang Sect arrived as well. Little Fatty of Tomb Sect was among the crowd too. All of them ran over to Ethereal Peak to catch up with the old immortal Crane. Nian Qi, my brother isn't here? Xiaoning asked softly. Nian Qi replied, I'm not sure. He set off a long time ago, but he shouldn't have arrived yet. Xiaoning nodded with a worried expression. Do you know what is this primordial taboo thing? Has anyone seen it before? I'm not sure. Enigma Palace has hidden it extremely well, and no one has seen what a primordial taboo looks like. Nian Qi shook her head. Xiaoning sighed, and the scene of night spirit leaving flashed through her mind. As time passed by, the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects, and 6 Buddhist monasteries were all present. Successors of the 5 heretical doctrines arrived as well. Members of the 3 aristocratic families and 2 islands did not appear still. Why? What are you thinking about? When Shangguanzi saw Extreme Fire frowning in deep thought, as though something was bothering him, she could not help but ask gently. Something is not right? Extreme Fire frowned and looked towards Sword Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, and the other super sections. The lineup of these sects for the Dharma Characteristic ranking this time round is a little too grand. Normally speaking, The Dharma Characteristic Dao Lords were the main characters in the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking. At most, the major sects and factions would send one or two conjoint body mighty figures to lead the teams. That was enough. However, there were already more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures in Sword Sect this time round. It was the same for Zephyr Thunder Palace, Glass Palace, Heavenly Dipper Sect, and Chaos Essence Sect as well. Indeed, it's a little strain. Shangguanzi nodded with a confused expression. Extreme Fire swept his gaze across Sword Sect's camp with a burning gaze and said slowly, "Furthermore, have you noticed that there are some conjoint body mighty figures in these sects that don't seem like they're from those sects?" "What do you mean by that?" Shangguanzi was confused. Extreme Fire said bluntly, "Some of them don't seem like they're human." "Not human?" Shangguanzi's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively thought that Fiend demons had infiltrated the place. However, on second thought, she realized that Fiend demons couldn't be powerful enough to hide from the conjoint body mighty figures present. If it weren't Fiend demons, could it be? "You're referring to the Primordial 9 races?" Shangguanzi asked softly. "It's possible." Extreme Fire nodded with a grim expression. The Primordial 9 races haven't stepped foot into Tianhuang mainland for so many years. What are they trying to do by appearing in the Dharma Characteristic ranking? Shangguanzi asked. "I'm not sure yet. Let's wait and see." Extreme Fire said. The Dharma Characteristic ranking had yet to begin. Although it seemed calm on the surface, Extreme Fire could sense the undercurrent surging beneath the calm water with killing intent everywhere, as though a tsunami was brewing. Suddenly, he asked, "The Dharma Characteristic ranking is about to begin and Zimo isn't here yet." "I didn't see him." Shangguanzi shook her head as well. On the other side, Heavenly Secrets, Immortal Sword, and the others gathered and sent voice transmissions with their spirit consciousnesses. "Dao Lord Desolate Marshal hasn't appeared yet. What should we do?" Immortal Sword said, "He might have realized the danger and won't come." "Absolutely impossible." Heavenly Secrets said with a faint smile and a confident tone. Pausing for a moment, he continued, "The reason why Desolate Marshal hasn't appeared is because he hasn't seen that beast. Fufu, Desolate Marshal is way too cautious. If he doesn't come out, I'll force him to." Heavenly Secrets said and arrived in midair in a flash. "Everyone, please be silent." Heavenly Secrets pressed his hands against the air. Although his voice was neither loud nor soft, it spread to every corner of the Heaven and Earth Valley and attracted countless gazes. "The fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking is about to begin. Everyone, please calm down before that," he said indifferently. In the Primordial era, there was a taboo life form that was cruel and bloodthirsty, incurring the wrath of the heavens and the masses. We heard that a bloodline of that taboo had awakened in this generation, so we joined forces and captured it alive. Today, with all the cultivators of the world as witnesses, we'll kill this beast and drink its blood. Chapter 1293, A Long Wait. Chapter 1293, A Long Wait. The cultivators of Heaven and Earth Valley were densely packed as they looked around. Some of them had lost expressions while others were curious to see what the legendary taboo living being was like. Heavenly Secrets looked around, as though he was searching for something. Unfortunately, Su Zimo did not appear even after a while. There are too many cultivators in Heaven and Earth Valley. It'll be difficult to find Desolate Marshal if he's hiding within. Immortal Sword frowned slightly and sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. Heavenly Secrets smiled faintly. "Desolate Marshal is very cautious. I'm sure he won't appear until he sees that beast. There's no harm in that. Bring that beast out and let the cultivators of the world take a look." He looked at God Hanling behind him and nodded slightly. God Hanling smiled gently and removed a bag from his waist. He opened it, and a black shadow fell out. Cling, clang. Accompanied by the sound of heavy chains, the black shadow slammed onto the ground heavily. A stir broke out amongst the crowd. Countless gazes landed on that figure. It was a black-robed young man who seemed to have lost a lot of blood chi. His face was pale, and he had a pair of hands and feet. In fact, there was a gigantic iron hoop around his neck that was stained with blood. Even so, there was no pain in the black-robed young man's eyes. Instead, they were cold. "What's that? Is that what a primordial taboo look like? He looks no different from us." Many cultivators were disappointed. "Night Spirit." A series of exclamations sounded from the direction of Elixir Yang sect. A female cultivator was agitated and wanted to charge forward, but she was held down by a conjoint body mighty figure of Elixir Yang sect and could not move. "Isn't that Fairy Elixir Yang? What's going on?" Fairy Elixir Yang knows this black-robed man? Night Spirit. No wonder he looks familiar. He seems to have a close relationship with Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Some cultivators discussed softly. Fairy Elixir Yang was Su Xiaoning. "Xiaoning, don't be rash. Calm down." The Elixir Yang sect elder had a grim expression. She had lived for so long and was experienced and knowledgeable. Naturally, she could tell that the super sects had a grand lineup this time round for a specific motive, and they were hostile. Anyone that stood out at this moment would have a high chance of getting themselves killed. "How can I calm down? That's Night Spirit." Xiaoning teared instantly when she saw the state Night Spirit was in. Night Spirit raised his head slightly and frowned imperceptibly, seemingly in pain. That slight movement caused blood to ooze from his throat. He met Xiaoning's gaze and shook his head with all his might. That tugged at the wound, and the spike dug deep into his neck once more, causing a few grisly blood to flow out slowly. Night Spirit was reminding Xiaoning not to stand out. He knew very well that there was no way he could survive now that he was in the hands of the 6 races. At this moment, whoever dared to stand beside him would die with him. "Night Spirit, don't move first," Xiaoning cried. At that moment, she had no idea what to do. She wanted to charge forward, but she was restrained by the sect elder and could not move at all. She could only stand on the spot and look at Night Spirit with a twisted heart. All these years, Night Spirit had never left her side no matter where she was or what she thought. Even when she traveled through the Tianhuang North region to seek treatment, he remained by her side silently without forsaking her. If not for Night Spirit, she would have died countless times over the years. Furthermore, after so many years of interaction, the feelings between the two of them had already surpassed ordinary friendship. It was just that neither of them exposed the other. In Xiaoning's heart, Night Spirit was already a family member second only to Su Zimo. Although she had experienced many things over the years and had toughened up, she still felt powerless against such a situation, and her mind was in chaos. "I've got it." Extreme Fire's gaze focused, and he suddenly said, "That primordial taboo is most likely not their only target in this fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking. They also want Zimo." Pure Maiden Sect. Demoness Ji frowned slightly with her veil over her face. Could it be because of Zimo? She knew the relationship between Su Zimo and Night Spirit and realized that the fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking was probably a huge trap. Right then, Heavenly Secret said slowly, "I believe all the cultivators are puzzled as to how an ordinary person like him could be a primordial taboo." That was indeed the question on the minds of many cultivators. That's because nobody has seen the true form of that beast yet. After saying that, Heavenly Secrets tapped his finger gently, and a stream of mist entered Night Spirit's body. Roar! A roar burst forth from the depths of Night Spirit's throat, and his entire body began to tremble and expand. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic demon beast that was 100 feet tall and nearly 200 feet long appeared on the spot. Cling! Clang! Night Spirit struggled and howled with a torrential malevolent aura as the heavenly godlock let out a violent sound. Pissed! Many cultivators gasped. The entire crowd retreated half a step instinctively. The aura that Night Spirit emanated was way too terrifying. Cultivators of the human race would feel uncontrollable fear when they saw living beings of the primordial 9 races, let alone Night Spirit whom even the primordial 9 races feared. It was an uncontrollable fear that came from the depths of their bloodlines. All the cultivators present felt their scalps prickle and their hairs stood on end. Even for conjoint body mighty figures such as Extreme Fire and the others, their pupils constricted. Even though Night Spirit was trapped by an unknown golden chain, his claws and shimmering tailbone gave them shudders. This was a living being that was born to kill. Beast. Heavenly Secrets reached out and grabbed, forming a long whip that whipped Night Spirit heavily as he hollered, "Behave yourself." Night Spirit's body trembled once more, almost convulsing. He could not fight his way out when he was bound by the heavenly godlock. God Hanling behind Heavenly Secrets stood out and tapped his fingers gently, sending a golden beam of light into the heavenly godlock. Whoosh! The heavenly godlock shone brightly and the iron hoop shrank continuously. Poof! 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 Blood sprayed from Night Spirit's neck and limbs once again. Under the suppression of the heavenly godlock, Night Spirit transformed into his human form once more and laid on the ground with a weak aura and dispirited expression. In the Primordial era, that beast destroyed countless living beings of various races and was bloodthirsty. If he is allowed to grow, there would never be peace in Tianhuang mainland. Heavenly Secrets said slowly. Since that's the case, it's better to kill this beast lest it wreaks havoc and massacres the world. That's right, kill it. I heard that the flesh of this beast is extremely nourishing. Kill it, and we'll split it evenly. A series of shouts sounded from the crowd. The conjoint body mighty figures of the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects, and 6 Buddhist monasteries nodded in agreement without any objections. There was no way such a huge threat could be allowed to grow. No wonder Night Spirit was captured. So, there's a cultivator of Enigma Palace backing you guys. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from outside the crowd. All the cultivators looked over. A cultivator flew through the air with black hair and green robes. He had refined features, but there was a murderous look on his face as he strode over slowly. "You're finally here." Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. "I've been waiting for a long time." Chapter 1294, 3 Daos. Chapter 1294, 3 Daos. Daolord Desolate Marshal. Immortal Sword had a venomous gaze and gritted his teeth. His essence spirit injury had yet to recover till this day. All these years, it could be said that he was reduced to such a state because of Desolate Marshal Daolord. Back in Thousand Demon Valley, Desolate Marshal was the one who snatched away the heaven-slaying sword art that should have belonged to him. If he had obtained the heaven-slaying sword art, his combat strength would have increased exponentially and he would not have lost to Extreme Fire later on. He would not have been hunted down by the Asura and fled in panic, causing his reputation to plummet. He would not have lost to Desolate Marshal and ended up in such a state. His combat strength was greatly reduced with his essence spirit injured and could not match half of his peak strength. Immortal Sword gripped his fists instinctively when he saw Suzimo appear. He knew that all the humiliation he had suffered over the years would all end today. He was going to square things with Suzimo. He was not the only one with such thoughts. Desolate Marshal, how dare you come and fight for the Dharma Characteristic ranking? A Dharma Characteristic Dao Lord of Glass Palace stood up slowly and exuded a powerful aura. His body seemed to reflect a glass light as he said slowly, "It's time to settle the feud between you and Glass Palace." "Who are you?" Suzimo asked casually without even looking at him. Daolord Fengchun. The Dharma Characteristic Dao Lord of Glass Palace said slowly. Daolord Fengchun. I heard that his rainbow glass body has already cultivated to a height of 88 feet. He has a chance of making it to the top 10 of the Dharma Characteristic ranking. 88 feet. Isn't that a foot taller than Desolate Marshal's Heaven and Earth Dharma Characteristic? Otherwise, where do you think Daolord Fengchun got his confidence from? The death of Monk Yuan Bei was no longer a secret. If Suzimo had not appeared, Glass Palace would have sought him out after the Dharma Characteristic ranking as well. Back in the Dao Inheritance ground, Suzimo killed many titular disciples. That was a vicious slap to the mouths of the super sects. The reason why that extraordinary humiliation and deep hatred was temporarily put aside was because of the person beneath the Dragon Burial Valley. However, none of the super sects forgot about it. Desolate Marshal, I heard that you took away the legacy Dermic art of Zephyr Thunder Palace. How dare you? Indeed, right after Dao Lord Feng Chen, a Dharma Characteristic Dao Lord of Zephyr Thunder Palace stood out and hollered with a thunderous voice. Do you really think that Zephyr Thunder Palace is weak? And you are? Su Zimo asked indifferently. I'm Dao Lord 5 Thunder. The Dao Lord of Zephyr Thunder Palace said proudly. Dao Lord 5 Thunder has come out of seclusion as well. He was 5th on the previous Dharma Characteristic ranking, and his Heaven and Earth Dharma Characteristic was 84 feet tall. I wonder how much he has grown over the years. He must definitely be confident if he dares to challenge Desolate Marshal. Heavenly Secret smiled without saying anything at the side. He was in no hurry to attack. As long as Desolate Marshal appeared, he would definitely die. Is that the so-called strongest monster incarnate in history, Dao Lord Desolate Marshal? The Golden Crow Third Prince pouted his lips in disdain. He looks like nothing much. He's probably not going to last a single move against me. It's time to take revenge for my clansmen in Myriad Phenomenon City. Rakshasa Feng Tian twisted his neck and let out a series of crackling sounds. Don't get anxious. God Han Ling smiled gently. Let's watch the show first and let the humans fight among themselves. Wearing a wide hood, Wu Xia let out 2 ghastly gazes in the darkness and exclaimed softly. He was way too familiar with that face. Back in the Dragonbone Valley, the young master of the dragon race looked exactly like that. Of course, the aura of the young master of the dragon race was even more berserk and his blood chi was terrifying. Furthermore, he had a head of scarlet hair. However, this green-robed cultivator's aura seemed more restrained. There was no way they were the same person. However, Wu Xia would not believe that they were unrelated. Interesting. Let's see what secrets you have. Wu Xia lamented internally and waited to see what would happen. Zimo's situation doesn't seem too good. Shang Guanzi frowned slightly. No worries. Extreme Fire said, these Dharma Characteristic paragons are probably not enough to pose a threat to Zimo. Shang Guanzi said, however, these Dharma Characteristic paragons are backed by conjoint body mighty figures of the super sections. If they lose, the latter won't be able to sit still. Humph. Extreme Fire said, if any conjoint body mighty figure dares to attack Zimo, I'll go and meet them. Although Patriarch Yuan Bei has passed away, Zimo still has me, Extreme Fire. I want to see who dares to bully the young and suppress Zimo. In midair, Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings and swept his gaze across the super sects such as Sword Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, and Chaos Essence Sect. He said slowly, anyone else who wants to settle scores with me, Desolate Marshal, step forward at the same time. Desolate Marshal, you killed so many titular disciples. Do you really think that no one can restrain you? A Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and shouted, Stop talking. Su Zimo waved his hands. Before the Dao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect could finish, he was interrupted by Su Zimo. I'm not interested in your titles. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, I'm not here today to fight with you guys for the top of the Dharma Characteristic ranking. I advise all of you not to provoke me. He was truly reminding those cultivators out of goodwill. How arrogant. Brazen. Before long, Dharma Characteristic paragons from Heavenly Dipper Sect, Sword Sect, Illusion Fiend Cult, Malevolent Earth Sect, and Cloud Rain Sect stood out and glared at Su Zimo with hostile expressions and killing intent. Ba, a monk of Diamond Monastery from the Buddhist monasteries stood out and clasped his palms together, chanting a Buddhist proclamation. Patron Desolate Marshal, you're the reason why Monk Black Gold of Diamond Monastery died, right? Su Zimo had nothing to do with Monk Black Gold's death in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple. Even Diamond Monastery is here to join the crowd? Su Zimo swept his gaze at him. Ha 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 ha. The Golden Crow Third Prince could not help but laugh and wave his hand. Interesting, interesting. A cultivator actually attracted the encirclement of the 3 immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend Daos. He turned towards the voice. Although the Golden Crow Third Prince was in human form, Su Zimo could already sense that this person was extremely terrifying with a scorching blood chi. He was definitely from a foreign race. It was most likely one of the Primordial 9 races. Given his current combat strength, he could carve out a path even against the encirclement of conjoint body mighty figures of the human race. However, a conjoint body mighty figure of the Primordial 9 races would pose a huge threat to him. He might not even be able to leave alive, let alone save Night Spirit. Desolate Marshal, I don't care what you're here for. Since you're here, pay with your life for the fallen cultivators of Glass Palace. Dao Lord Feng Chen hollered and did not waste time on Su Zimo. Leaping up, he released his Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic right away. Swoosh! A phantom soared into the skies from the top of Dao Lord Feng Chen's head. In the blink of an eye, it rose to a height of 88 feet and was indomitable. Its body shone with a rainbow-colored glass light, resembling a jade bangle that was carved with gems that shone with a blinding light. Boom! The Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic attacked all of a sudden and smashed towards Su Zimo. Scram! Su Zimo's attention was not on the Dharma characteristic paragons at all as he continued searching for traces of the Primordial 9 races in the crowd. Without even looking, he threw out a top-tier Dharmic art of the Buddhist monasteries, the Great Sanskrit Light Fist. Dharmic powers were vast and surged like a sea. Dao Lord Feng Chen's rainbow glass body that was 88 feet tall seemed insignificant against the might of that punch. Its aura was completely gone. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Under countless gazes, the rainbow glass body was shattered by a single punch from Su Zimo. The crowd was astonished. Chapter 1295, Suppressing the Dharma Characteristic Ranking. Chapter 1295, Suppressing the Dharma Characteristic Ranking. Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristics were the strongest methods of Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. An 88 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic was legendary, and if this was the previous Dharma characteristic ranking, it would definitely be ranked at the top. But now, the rainbow glass body was shattered by a Dharmic art from Su Zimo. Ignoring the level of that Dharmic art, the Dharmic powers released by that attack were way too terrifying. Even an 88 feet tall Heaven and Earth Dharma characteristic could not withstand it. Blood drained from the face of Dao Lord Feng Chen as he retreated and nearly fell from midair. All his pride had vanished completely against Su Zimo's punch. No, Desolate Marshal isn't at the mid-stage Dharma characteristic realm. The moment Su Zimo attacked, there was no way he could hide his cultivation realm. Perfected Dharma characteristic realm? This Desolate Marshal has only advanced to the Dharma characteristic realm slightly more than 100 years ago, and he's already at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. As expected of the number 1 monster incarnate of history, his cultivation speed is way too terrifying. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. The Dharmic powers of Su Zimo's perfected Dharma characteristic realm after tempering his essence spirit from the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects were unimaginably vast and were far beyond the Dharma characteristic realm. They were comparable to any conjoint body mighty figure present. All of you, get lost. Su Zimo's gaze was like lightning as he looked at Dao Lord Five Thunder and the other Dharma characteristic Dao Lords and said coldly. In reality, those Dharma characteristic Dao Lords were already stunned by Su Zimo's punch and did not dare to act rashly. However, all of them were paragons and monster incarnates of the cultivation world after all. No one would be able to take it lying down if they were scolded in front of everyone. Desolate Marshal, aren't you way too arrogant? Dao Lord Five Thunder harumphed coldly. Right now, all the super sects are gathered with paragons. You're only at the Dharma characteristic realm. So what if you're strong? That means I can suppress you with my strength. Su Zimo was focused on Night Spirit and was unwilling to get entangled with those Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. Without a second word, he conjured the immortal trap seal and sent it towards Dao Lord Five Thunder. All right. Dao Lord Five Thunder was fearless as well and hollered. Let's see how long you can continue to be arrogant. desolate martial. Boom! Suddenly, a gigantic phantom appeared from Tao Lord Five Thunder's body and rose to 80 feet instantly. Furthermore, it showed no signs of stopping. In the blink of an eye, a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic that was surrounded by wind and thunder descended in midair, even taller than the rainbow glass body earlier on. 89 feet. 1,000 years ago, this Zephyr Thunder Dermic body was merely 84 feet tall. Now, Tao Lord Five Thunder had already condensed his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic to a height of 89 feet. Desolate Martial, pay with your life for killing 2 monster incarnates of Chaos Essence Sect. On the other side, a Tao Lord of Chaos Essence Sect stood out and released his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic right away. Boom! A phantom soared into the skies. In the blink of an eye, it had grown to a height of 84 feet. Chaos Essence Chi Body. Desolate Martial, I heard that you've got more than one heaven and earth Dharma characteristic. I want to see it for myself today as well. A Tao Lord of Heavenly Dipper Sect stood out and released his heaven and earth Dharma characteristic as well. A 85 feet Heavenly Dipper Body. Bang, bang, bang. Illusion Fiend Dharma Body. 18 meters Metal Body. Startling Sword Body. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords appeared and formed an encirclement around Suzimo. One after another, heaven and earth Dharma characteristics stood in midair with terrifying auras. They're joining forces to deal with Desolate Martial. These Dharma characteristic Tao Lords are definitely ranked at the top of the Dharma characteristic ranking in terms of combat strength. To think that the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking would turn out like this. Suddenly, Immortal Sword stifled a chuckle when he saw that. Elder Immortal Sword, what's wrong? The disciple behind Immortal Sword, who was also a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, asked softly. Immortal Sword shook his head gently and curled his lips with a mocking expression. These Dharma characteristic Tao Lords are no match for Desolate Martial. If anyone present knew Suzimo's combat strength the best, Immortal Sword would definitely be one of them. That was because he was nearly killed by Suzimo in the bamboo forest. Then why didn't you stop those Tao Lords, Master? The disciple asked again. Immortal Sword smiled without saying anything. Right then, Heavenly Secrets looked over and the two of them exchanged glances with a tacit understanding. There was naturally no way they would step in to stop it. The more ruthless Desolate Martial fought against the Dharma characteristic Tao Lords, the more there was no room for negotiation between him and the super sects. At that time, Desolate Martial would become the enemy of the entire world. It wouldn't matter if he was the strongest monster incarnate in history, or if he had imparted martial arts to all living beings. Everything would just be a joke. On the battlefield, the moment the immortal trap seal descended, it was destroyed by the 89 feet tall Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. This Zephyr Thunder Dermic body was extremely close to a supreme Dharma characteristic, and its dermic powers were pure to the extreme. Among the Daming Dermic seals, the immortal trap seal's power was average. That was why it could not take on Tao Lord Five Thunder's Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Ha 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 ha. Tao Lord Five Thunder reared his head in laughter. That's all there is to Desolate Martial. That's all? Suzimo sneered as well. The dermic seal in his hands changed and he bent his fingers, as though he was conjuring a wheel, condensing a strange dermic seal that smashed towards the Zephyr Thunder dermic body. Among the Daming Dermic seals, one of the two most ferocious and powerful dermic seals, the Great Vajra Wheel seal. Boom! There was a deafening sound. An incomparably gigantic golden wheel appeared in midair, crushing forward continuously with a shuddering aura. The void beneath the golden wheel trembled and distorted. It was as though nothing could stop the gigantic golden wheel, not even the 89 feet tall Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the Great Vajra Wheel seal collided against the Zephyr Thunder Dermic body. Crack, crack, crack. A jarring sound echoed from the Zephyr Thunder Dermic body as cracks appeared on its surface and spread continuously, covering its entire body instantly. Its dermic powers drained rapidly. Pissed. The crowd was shocked. The 89 feet tall heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was shattered by a single dermic seal from Su Zimo as well. Dao Lord 5 Thunder was shocked and spat out an arrow of blood. At the same time, the dozens of heaven and earth Dharma characteristics that were more than 80 feet tall around Su Zimo moved at the same time and charged towards him. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he channeled his essence spirit and conjured hand seals with both hands, conjuring terrifying dermic arts instantly. Endless dermic powers surged towards Su Zimo. Even the dermic powers of the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics were forcibly drawn over by Su Zimo. The dermic powers in Su Zimo's hands were almost boiling. Great Mount Meru Seal, Sandstorm, Avicii, Mighty Heavenly Dragon Transcendence, Sea Burial Secret Skill, Apocalyptic Fiend Fist. Instantly, Su Zimo released more than 10 terrifying top-grade dermic arts and collided against the heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. Boom! The void seemed to explode instantly. A blinding semicircular light spread out suddenly with a heat wave. An incomparably domineering aftershock swept in all directions like a tornado. The cultivators retreated. Even some conjoint body mighty figures were shocked and retreated to avoid him. Was that the power of a Dharma characteristic? Before long, the dust cleared. In midair, there was only a figure in green robes. His black hair danced and his gaze was burning, emitting a powerful aura that swept through the 9 heavens and 10 earths like an emperor that was peerless. More than 10 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics shattered. Instantly, the entire heaven and earth valley fell silent. Everyone realized that Dao Lord Desolate Marshal had suppressed all the paragons on the Dharma characteristic ranking single-handedly. Chapter 1296, Enemy of the World. Chapter 1296, Enemy of the World. Swoosh! A glass light suddenly descended with a sharp killing intent, almost tearing through the void as it smashed down towards Su Zimo's head. The glass light seemed to carry the might of heaven and earth and was unstoppable. Conjoint body mighty figure. Desolate Marshal is invincible among the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. In the end, the conjoint body mighty figures can't sit by idly. The mighty figure of Glass Palace is trying to kill Desolate Marshal directly. The crowd was in an uproar. All of a suddenly, a black shadow flew out from the crowd on the other side and struck the glass light. There was a loud bang. The black shadow revealed its true form. It was a gigantic weapon tripod. On the other side, the conjoint body mighty figure that attacked shuddered and staggered a few steps back. He had a terrible expression as he glared in the direction of the weapon tripod. Extreme fire. The Glass Palace mighty figure grit his teeth and spat out. It was only then that many cultivators realized what was happening. In that split second earlier, the mighty figure of Glass Palace wanted to kill Su Zimo, but the latter was saved by mighty figure Extreme Fire of 100 Refinement Sect. What are you trying to do? Extreme Fire stood up slowly and his eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Today is the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking. Earlier on, I didn't say anything even when many Dharma characteristic Dao Lords surrounded Zimo together shamelessly. And now, even a conjoint body mighty figure wants to be equally shameless? Extreme Fire, this has nothing to do with the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking today. This is a feud between super sects like us and Desolate Marshal. A mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect stood out with an unfriendly expression as well. A mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect had a murderous aura and said coldly, "That's right. The feud between us and Desolate Marshal has to end today." "It's fine to end a feud," Extreme Fire said. "The cultivation world is filled with strife, and it's inevitable for there to be friendships and feuds. However, if you guys want to bully others with numbers and seniority, I'm not going to let that happen as long as I'm here." Extreme Fire, let me advise you not to get involved. Immortal Sword laughed coldly at the side. Nobody will be able to protect Desolate Marshal today. He'll definitely die. Extreme Fire put away his weapon tripod without any fear in his eyes as he said slowly, "Why? You so-called orthodox sects don't even know shame anymore? A group of conjoint body mighty figures are actually joining forces to deal with a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. Is this how righteous immortal sects are? A mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley stood out. It's the fortune of all living beings that Desolate Martial was able to establish the martial Dao and impart martial arts to all living beings. He established that eternal steel with incredible merit. If you guys insist on making things difficult for him, won't you be disappointing the hearts of all cultivators in the world? That's right. A mighty figure from one of the immortal sects, Clear Wind Temple, nodded as well. Although it's a personal feud, what does it mean if a few conjoint body mighty figures of the immortal, Fiend, and Buddhist sects join forces to deal with a single Dharma characteristic Dao Lord? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the future generation? Not all the super sects of the 9 immortal sects were against Su Zimo. A mighty figure of Pure Maiden sect stood out as well and sneered. Although those from the immortal sects speak of benevolence and Tao, they're filled with scheming and conniving plots. What a joke. Ba. A mighty figure of Dipankara Monastery chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly as well. Patron Desolate Martial has supreme merit in giving to all living beings. Indeed, you guys should not be doing this. The impact of Desolate Martial establishing a Dao and imparting martial arts to all living beings was way too great for the cultivation world and Tianhuang mainland. That single incident pushed Su Zimo's reputation to its peak. Before long, 2 factions were formed among the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sections. The people who wanted to kill Su Zimo were naturally led by Immortal Sword. Extreme Fire and the others were on Su Zimo's side. Of course, although the mighty figures of Snowdrift Valley and Clear Wind Temple were willing to speak up for Su Zimo, they might not wage war against the other mighty figures for the sake of Desolate Martial. Things are getting more interesting. The Golden Crow Third Prince clapped excitedly when he saw the chaos in the human cultivation world. I truly don't understand how we were defeated in the ancient war given the state of the human race. Rakshasa Feng Tian sneered. Piak, piak. While the 2 sides were in a stalemate, someone clapped from the side, attracting the gazes of many cultivators. Heavenly Secrets finally stood out. Ever since Su Zimo appeared, he had been watching coldly from the sidelines. Now that the situation was tense, he had to step in. Everyone, there's no need to argue. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently. Why don't we ask Dao Lord Desolate Martial first? If you aren't here for the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking today, what are you here for? That question was the key. Su Zimo did not hesitate and sneered, pointing at Night Spirit beneath Immortal Sword and the others. There's nothing to hide. I'm here today to take him away. Ah. The moment he said that, a cry sounded from the crowd. Night Spirit was a cruel and cold-blooded primordial taboo. Apart from the fight for the Dharma characteristic ranking, all the cultivators gathered here today were here to witness Night Spirit's death. But now, Su Zimo had openly declared that he wanted to take away that extremely dangerous primordial taboo. Good, good, good. The smile in Heavenly Secrets' eyes intensified. As expected of Desolate Martial, you're truly open and honest. A primordial taboo was the enemy of all 10,000 races. Su Zimo's action was equivalent to standing opposite the 10,000 races. Nobody dared to imagine what sort of a bloodbath that primordial taboo would cause in Tianhuang mainland if it was alive. That was an uncertain danger. It had to be killed. The immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects did not doubt that at all. This time round, even the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley frowned and reminded Desolate Martial, don't be foolish. If you want to save him, no one can save you. Those were truly earnest words. Unfortunately, Su Zimo was determined. He had made many preparations, including his trump card, the Dragon True Body. There was no way he would back down. Extreme Fire's expression turned grim as well. Zimo, you have to think carefully about the possible consequences of your decision. Extreme Fire sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness at that time. You'll turn the entire world against you. Even I won't be able to protect you. Even if you manage to escape, you might not survive in Tianhuang mainland. I know. Su Zimo replied indifferently, Master, there's no need to say more. This is my decision. There's no need for you and 100 Refinement Sect to interfere. Senior Crane, Yin Chi, there's no need for you guys to attack either. Turning around, Suzimo said to everyone from Ethereal Peak. Thereafter, he looked at Demonis G of Pure Maiden Sect and shook his head slowly. Suzimo knew that if he chose to save Night Spirit, people like Extreme Fire and the others would stand by his side without hesitation as well. However, those people would definitely fall into the vortex and might be minced to death. That was because he knew that the enemies this time round were not only conjoint body mighty figures of Sword Sect and Chaos Essence Sect, but also the ferocious beings of the Primordial 9 races that were hidden among the cultivators. That was the reason why Suzimo did not inform Monkey and the others about Night Spirit's capture. Chapter 1297. Time for you to pay with your life. Chapter 1297. Time for you to pay with your life. Everyone, you heard it too. Desolate Marshall clearly knows that this beast is a taboo that wreaked havoc in the Primordial era, but he still wants to save it. What are your intentions, Desolate Marshall? Heavenly Secrets asked indifferently. Umitba, Patron Desolate Marshall, this matter is extremely important. If this taboo grows up, it'll probably cause endless bloodshed in Tianhuang mainland. The monk of Formless Monastery shook his head gently. That's right, we can't let it go. This beast is savage and has a murderous nature. If we let it go, there will definitely be trouble and no one in Tianhuang mainland will be spared. The crowd was in a frenzy. In reality, many cultivators did not understand the taboo race at all and did not have any deep feud with Night Spirit. The reason why they stood out was merely out of fear towards Night Spirit. Suddenly, Suzimo laughed with a mocking expression and surveyed his surroundings. You guys said that he's savage and murderous. Now, let me ask you guys, back in Myriad Phenomenon City when the Rakshasa and God race massacred human cultivators, who was the one who stood out to suppress them? Was it you? How about you? Suzimo pointed at the crowd and shouted. The crowd was silent. No one replied. Although most of the cultivators present had not experienced the battle in Myriad Phenomenon City, they had a rough understanding of what happened. If not for Suzimo and Night Spirit, the human paragons would have been annihilated and buried in Myriad Phenomenon City. Even if the ancestor of Night Spirit was violent and brutal in the Primordial era, what has that got to do with him? Suzimo said, I watched Night Spirit grow up since he was young. Although he's good at killing, he never kills for no reason. Still, nobody spoke. Suzimo looked around. A dense crowd of cultivators stood in Heaven and Earth Valley. Although there were many sects and factions gathered, most of the cultivators looked indifferent. Nobody was willing to listen to his logic. In the hearts of many cultivators, their first impression had already taken root. Suzimo shook his head gently. He knew that there was no need to explain further. Fufu, that's easy for you to say. The mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect sneered. A leopard never changes its spots. This beast's bloodline is filled with killing and bloodthirst. It'll be too late by the time he starts his massacre. Desolate Marshal, you have to think carefully and not be foolish. Out of goodwill, the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley said in a deep voice, even if you can't bear to see him in trouble, it's impossible to save him. Everyone's gathered today. Notwithstanding the Dharma Characteristic Dao Lords present, look at the number of conjoint body mighty figures from the super sects such as the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects as well as the 5 heretical doctrines. Notwithstanding the fact that you won't be able to save Night Spirit, even if you manage to do so, you won't be able to escape. Extreme Fire was not the only one. Even the mighty figure of Snowdrift Valley could tell. The reason why so many conjoint body mighty figures of Sword Sect, Chaos Essence Sect, and the other immortal sects were here was most likely to deal with Suzimo. An impenetrable trap had been set up here a long time ago, such that even ants could not escape. As long as Suzimo dared to attack, he would definitely die. Most importantly, killing Night Spirit today was the main purpose of everyone. Anyone that stood out to stop that would be crushed into dust. Extreme Fire could not do it. Even 100 refinement sect behind him could not do it. In the face of the tides, those that obeyed flourished and those that countered died. Keep an eye on Xiaoning and don't let her leave at all. The mighty figure of Elixir Yang's sect said slowly. Yaoyan, you're not allowed to attack either. The mighty figure of Pure Maiden sect said slowly. The only thing Pure Maiden sect and Elixir Yang's sect could do was to help neither side. The current situation was extremely obvious. Whoever dared to help Desolate Marshal would become a great enemy for super sects like Sword Sect and Chaos Essence Sect. Furthermore, Enigma Palace was the host of this matter. Enigma Palace had an extraordinary status in Tianhuang mainland and most cultivators would not question it. Extreme Fire had a grim expression. He had not expected that today's matter would turn into a situation where there was no room for negotiation. First, you should leave. Right then, Night Spirit gulped and said. The iron hoops that were initially around his neck shrank once more as sharp spikes protruded with fresh blood flowing out. Under the restriction of the heavenly godlock, Night Spirit had to endure endless pain for every single word he said. However, he still raised his head and looked at Su Zimo in the distance despite the wound tearing. First, they want to deal with you. Don't fall for it. Don't worry, Night Spirit. I'll definitely take you away. Su Zimo's gaze turned increasingly cold as he looked at the blood on Night Spirit's body. The killing intent around him was almost materialized. One after another, gigantic stars appeared in the firmaments. Tisk, TSK. Your brotherhood sure runs deep. Immortal Sword sneered. That's perfect. I'll send the two of you to hell today. Anyone unrelated to today's matter, make way. Su Zimo was filled with killing intent as he said coldly, I'm going to take Night Spirit away with me today. I'll kill anyone who stops me. What a bold claim. Chaos Essence Sect's mighty figure sneered. Who do you think you are? You think you're strong enough to go against the entire world? Heavenly Secret said indifferently, I'll say this as well. Whoever helps Desolate Marshal will be going against the entire cultivation world, the human race, and the 10,000 races of the world. They will be punished by the world. Ha ha ha. Immortal Sword burst into laughter. Desolate Marshal, you can't even protect yourself. Yet, you want to kill others? How laughable. Immortal Sword, it's time for you to pay with your life. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded from outside the crowd. It was hoarse and deep, but it possessed a terrifying fiend power. Who is there? Immortal Sword panicked and shouted instinctively. Although that voice sounded familiar, he could not believe it. Who would dare to stand out at a moment like this? All the cultivators turned towards the voice as well. In the void not far away, a black-robed cultivator walked over slowly. His white hair fell to his shoulders and his eyes were pitch black. His hands were slumped and in his right hand, there was a saber that was coiled with fiend chi. Ah, it's the Asura. What Asura? It's Yin Beichen. Isn't Yin Beichen already dead? The Asura saber has already returned to Asura sect, and the current Asura is already someone else. The crowd discussed. Su Zimo glanced at the Asura and his heart ached. After not seeing him for nearly 100 years, the Asura's hair had turned white. It was unknown what sort of pain he had endured alone all these years. Be but your essence spirit injury, impossible. Immortal Sword looked at Yin Beichen, who was walking over slowly in disbelief, and shrieked. He discovered to his shock that Yin Beichen's essence spirit had already recovered. Yin Beichen, back down. You're a cultivator of Asura sect. Don't implicate the entire sect because of you. A Dharma Characteristic Dao Lord of Asura sect stood out and hollered at Yin Beichen with a cold expression. The mighty figure of Asura sect did not stop him, as though it was only right. Who are you? Yin Beichen's gaze shifted as he asked expressionlessly. I'm the Asura of the current era. The Dharma Characteristic Dao Lord had a proud expression and flipped his palm, already holding the Asura saber. Someone like you is worthy of being called the Asura? Yin Beichen slashed in reverse towards the Dharma Characteristic Dao Lord's head. A black light tore through the air with a suffocating aura of death. Before the titular disciple who referred to himself as the Asura could react, he was sliced into two by Yin Beichen, and his body and essence spirit were destroyed. Chapter 1298, Massive Battle. Chapter 1298, Massive Battle. Pissed. The place fell into an uproar. Nobody expected Yin Beichen to attack. Less than that, nobody expected the titular disciple of Asura sect, the Asura of this generation, to fail to defend against a single slash from Yin Beichen. How ruthless. This is what it means to become an Asura through killing. When the Asura goes crazy, he even kills cultivators of his own sect. He's truly fearless and cold-blooded. Many cultivators discussed softly with wary expressions. Yin Beichen, what are you doing? The mighty figure of Asura sect was enraged and pointed at the sect cultivator who had just fallen, shouting, I can ignore the fact that you killed him. The fight for the Asura has always been about killing. However, you're not allowed to interfere in today's matter. Do you want to go against the entire cultivation world? So? Yin Beichen replied indifferently. You. The mighty figure of Asura sect was speechless. Su Zimo was probably the only one who could understand Yin Beichen's emotions. Qin Pianran died, and the hatred Fiend Saber acknowledged Yin Beichen as its master. He obtained the Hatred Sutra and inherited the entire legacy of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. He hated the heavens for being blind and the earth for being heartless. He hated the entire cultivation world for refusing to let them off. It did not matter even if he was enemies with the entire cultivation world. If there was a single person in this world without fear and reservations, it would be the Asura, Yin Beichen. Yin Beichen looked at Immortal Sword and said slowly, Immortal Sword, I've waited for so long. You're finally willing to come out. All these years, Yin Beichen had been waiting for an opportunity. Although he inherited the Hatred Sutra, he did not lose his rationality. If he killed his way into Sword Sect recklessly, not only would he not be able to take revenge for Qin Pianran, he would also die. Yin Beichen had waited for almost 100 years for this day. He would definitely not miss this opportunity. It was as Su Zimo thought. He would kill anyone who dared to stand in his way. Asura, even if you advance to the conjoint body realm, it's impossible for you to kill me. The moment Yin Beichen attacked earlier on, Immortal Sword could already sense that Yin Beichen was already a conjoint body mighty figure. However, on second thought, he knew that many major sects were gathered. Notwithstanding immortal sects like Chaos Essence Sect and Heavenly Dipper Sect, Sword Sect alone had more than 30 conjoint body mighty figures gathered this time round. Yin Beichen was only at the early stage conjoint body realm. Even if he was strong, how many conjoint body mighty figures could he defeat? Furthermore, he was surrounded by experts of the primordial 6 races. Yin Beichen's gaze shifted to heavenly secrets. You were the one who divined our location and told it to Immortal Sword, right? He was no fool. He had been wondering since a long time ago how his location with Qin Pianran was leaked. There must be an expert behind it. Right now, he had a guess when he saw Heavenly Secrets join forces with Immortal Sword. So what if I am? Heavenly Secrets still had a smile on his face. I once swore that I won't let anyone related to Pianran's death off. Yin Beichen said, Heavenly Secrets, you're next after Immortal Sword. The moment he said that, Yin Beichen's figure flashed and vanished from the spot, turning into rumbling fiend chi that was pitch black as ink that surged towards the Sword Sect faction. Senior brothers, help me stop him. Immortal Sword said with a calm expression. Although he was a conjoint body mighty figure, his essence spirit was injured, and he did not dare to fight Yin Beichen head-on. He could only ask for the help of other mighty figures in Sword Sect. Don't worry, junior brother. He's just a fiend at the early stage conjoint body realm. There's nothing to fear. A mighty figure of Sword Sect sneered and leaped into midair with his sword, slashing down viciously at the fiend chi beneath. Clang! The sword beam was resplendent and carried an extremely sharp edge, as though it wanted to slice the entire world into two. The Dharma Characteristic Dao Lords present did not even manage to see how the mighty figure of Sword Sect attacked. They felt their eyes sting with just a mere glance from afar. The might of a single slash was so terrifying. Swoosh! The fiend chi beneath surged without dodging or retreating and devoured the sword beam directly. The mighty figure of Sword Sect's expression changed. His sword was swallowed by a ball of fiend chi like a rock that fell into the ocean. Instead, the ball of fiend chi became even more terrifying and floated rapidly, charging towards the mighty figure of Sword Sect. Startling Sword Dao. The mighty figure of Sword Sect hollered and waved the sword in his hands. Instantly, streams of sword chi burst forth in a breathtaking and sharp manner, piercing into the incoming fiend chi. The fiend chi merely paused for a moment before extending upwards. Under countless gazes, it opened up a gigantic black hole and dragged the mighty figure of Sword Sect inside. A tragic cry sounded from the fiend chi. Immediately after, a corpse fell from the fiend chi. The mighty figure of Sword Sect's eyes were widened, and his cheeks were filled with black blood threads. His gaze was filled with endless fear, as though he was immensely shocked before his death. He died with grievances. Hatred Fiend Sutra? Heavenly Secrets focused his gaze and exclaimed slightly when he recognized the origin of the ball of fiend chi. The expressions of the cultivators changed when they heard that. The Fiend Emperor hatred was way too famous in the cultivation world. Among the emperors, the title of the Fiend Emperor hatred was not inferior to the human emperor. All of you, join forces. There's no need to fight him alone. Immortal Sword reminded hurriedly. Many mighty figures of Sword Sect reacted and struck as well. Sure. Instantly, the entire world was enveloped by streams of extremely sharp sword chi, and the void seemed to be sliced into pieces. Sword Dao was the most lethal. At the same time, Sword Sect was the place of pilgrimage for all sword cultivators. The killing power released by more than 30 mighty figures of Sword Sect was imaginable, causing the cultivators present to shudder in fear. Many Dharma Characteristic Dao Lords retreated, afraid that they would be implicated by the sword chi. Boundless hatred. Suddenly, a hoarse and deep voice sounded from the fiend chi. Immediately after, a pitch-black saber appeared in the world. It was coiled with fiend chi and emitted endless hatred. It was boundless and hated the entire world. Clang, 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 clang. The hatred fiend saber collided with many swords and let out a series of metallic sounds with sparks. Right in front of everyone, more than 30 swords were repelled by the hatred fiend saber. Every single sword was tainted by a layer of faint black fog, and their lights dimmed significantly. Their strength was greatly reduced, and even their sharpness was retracted. What? The combat strength of the Asura is actually at this level? More than 30 mighty figures of Sword Sect can't injure him. Yin Baichen possesses the Asura Sutra, and now, he inherited the Hatred Sutra. He's probably even stronger than the Fiend Emperor hatred back then. Sword Sect was in chaos. Right then, Su Zimo had already made his move as well and charged towards Night Spirit. Stop him. Desolate Marshal, I've been watching you the entire time. Die. The conjoint body mighty figures of Chaos Essence Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, and the other immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects attacked one after another to suppress Su Zimo. Zimo, let me help you. At the final moment, Extreme Fire stood out still. Although he had reservations, no matter what, Su Zimo saved his life. If not for Su Zimo, Extreme Fire would have died a long time ago. That reason alone was why Extreme Fire could not watch Su Zimo fight alone. Extreme Fire, I'm your opponent. Suddenly, a sinister and cold voice sounded not far away. Immediately after, a figure blocked in front of Extreme Fire. Chapter 1299, Terrifying Sword Art. Chapter 1299, Terrifying Sword Art. Purple Flame. Extreme Fire's gaze shifted onto the intruder, and his eyes blazed with rage. How dare you show yourself? Purple Flame was originally a cultivator of 100 Refinement sect and was Extreme Fire's senior brother. Later on, he betrayed the sect and founded Hellfire Hall. 50 years ago, Extreme Fire led cultivators into Hellfire Hall and suppressed the group of cultivators with a thunderous might. Purple Flame was severely injured and escaped with his life. In that battle, Hellfire Hall lost more than 10 conjoint body mighty figures and hundreds of Dharma Characteristic Downlords. Hellfire Hall was destroyed overnight. This battle could be considered as one of the rare few battles in the cultivation world in the past 100 years where Extreme Fire revealed his powerful methods to the cultivation world once again. To think that the Purple Flame would appear in Heaven and Earth Valley after recovering from his injuries after dozens of years. Junior brother, let's end the feud between us today. Purple Flame had a sinister voice and a venomous gaze. Extreme Fire's gaze focused and his expression changed slightly. Through his spirit consciousness detection, he discovered that Purple Flame was already at the perfected conjoint body realm. 50 years ago, Purple Flame was only at the late-stage conjoint body realm. After the conjoint body realm, it was extremely difficult to break through every single minor realm. Even with Extreme Fire's talent, his cultivation had hovered around the early-stage conjoint body realm for more than 100 years. Furthermore, Extreme Fire had severely injured Purple Flame. In just a few decades, Purple Flame's cultivation had broken through once more, and he was at the perfected conjoint body realm. It was not hard to imagine that Purple Flame must have obtained a tremendous fortuitous encounter to be able to cultivate to this stage and make a comeback. Surprised, right? Purple Flame noticed the shock in Extreme Fire's eyes and grinned. I've always been the loser in our fights. However, I'll be the victor this time round. Furthermore, winning you once is more than enough. I won't give you a second chance. Whoosh! Purple Flame's glabella shone and a gigantic weapon tripod flew out. Under the tripod burned an extremely sinister hellfire that charged towards Extreme Fire. Go! Extreme Fire summoned his Destiny Dermic weapon as well, and a gigantic weapon tripod descended. Raging flames burned on the tripod as well. However, the flames of Extreme Fire were even more scorching and masculine, as though they could incinerate everything in the world. Yin and Yang. The two different flames collided violently. Boom! With a loud bang, flames surged into the skies. It was as though two blazing suns had collided and shot out fireballs in all directions. There was even a fire rain in the skies. This was the combat strength of conjoint body mighty figures. Every single move could shake heaven and earth, crush mountains, and crack rocks. Extreme Fire had a grim expression. In that collision, his weapon tripod actually retreated a little and was disadvantaged in terms of strength. After all, there was a difference of 3 minor realms. Even if Extreme Fire cultivated the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra, there was still a difference in dermic powers between them. He frowned slightly with worry. Strength was only one of the factors in a fight. He specialized in the art of fire taming. Although Purple Flame surpassed him in dermic powers, he was fearless and still confident that he could suppress Purple Flame. He was worried about Su Zimo on the other side. Right now, Yin Baichen had barged into the Sword Sect faction and was surrounded by more than 30 mighty figures. He was entangled by Purple Flame, and victory won't be determined within a short period of time. As for Su Zimo, he was going to have to face the conjoint body mighty figures of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects alone. He would be destroyed instantly. Young Master, Nian Qi exclaimed and charged forward without hesitation. However, she was only at the Dharma Characteristic realm. Although she possessed the bloodline of the god race, she could only defend against 2 or 3 conjoint body mighty figures at most with her combat strength. Right now, there were already more than 50 conjoint body mighty figures from the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects who stood out right away. Desolate Marshal, you killed the titular disciple of Glass Palace and many paragons. I'll make you pay with blood today. The mighty figure of Glass Palace hollered and struck all of a sudden. Bang, bang, bang. Many conjoint body mighty figures attacked one after another and released earth-shaking dermic arts. Mighty figure dermic weapons tore through the air with terrifying might. The entire void trembled. The dermic arts of the 50 conjoint body mighty figures formed a surging dermic power ocean that seemed like it could devour everything. Even conjoint body mighty figures would be shredded into pieces without a corpse, let alone Dharma characteristic Dao lords like Su Zimo and Yin Qi. Ah, ah, ah. Roaring into the skies, Su Zimo conjured sword arts with both hands like a maniac and waved them wildly in all directions. SK, SK, TSK. 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth instantly. They were densely packed and surged with killing intent, as though they wanted to tear the world apart. Many stars appeared in the firmaments. The trajectories of those stars were extremely chaotic and collided. When the heavens' killing intent is released, the stars are shifted out of alignment. Under normal circumstances, a single heaven-slaying sword chi should be enough to threaten ordinary conjoint body mighty figures given Su Zimo's current cultivation and combat strength. Although the conjoint body mighty figures that attacked now came from super sects such as the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects and were all top-tier conjoint body experts, they felt their scalps tingle when they saw that. What sort of a scene would it be if 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth instantly? Pissed. The 50 conjoint body mighty figures gasped. Perhaps due to the illumination of the 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi or shock, the conjoint body mighty figures turned pale. Is that the power of a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord? The surrounding cultivators were already speechless. Even the experts of the primordial 6 races hidden in the crowd narrowed their gazes and took Su Zimo seriously for the first time, gradually putting away their contempt. If they were in the same position, it would be difficult for them to receive the 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi single-handedly. The 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi collided with the dermic powers ocean formed by more than 50 conjoint body mighty figures. The ocean was riddled with holes by the 1,000 sword chi, and its dermic powers drained rapidly. Clang, clang, clang. Many mighty figure dermic weapons collided with the heaven-slaying sword chi, and sparks flew as they were repelled. There were way too many heaven-slaying sword chi. Dozens of heaven-slaying sword chi broke through the ocean of dermic powers and pierced towards the surrounding conjoint body mighty figures with endless sharpness. Poof, poof, poof. Some conjoint body mighty figures shrieked repeatedly after their bodies were pierced by the heaven-slaying sword chi. Some conjoint body mighty figures had half their bodies sliced off by a sword chi. Instantly, limbs flew everywhere in midair as blood spewed into a mist. These conjoint body mighty figures were considered lucky. After all, conjoint body mighty figures had exuberant vitality and powerful blood chi. They could survive even if half their bodies were severed by the heaven-slaying sword chi. However, a few conjoint body mighty figures could not dodge in time, and their heads were pierced by a few heaven-slaying sword chi. Their essence spirits were destroyed, and they died on the spot. The crowd was shocked. More than 50 conjoint body mighty figures joined forces and collided with a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. However, some mighty figures ended up dying and many others were injured. The mighty figures were in chaos. What sort of sword Dao is that? How is it so terrifying? I heard that it's one of the 3 ancient sword arts, the heaven-slaying sword art. Desolate Marshal snatched it from a mortal sword. No wonder. When he heard the discussions around him, Immortal Sword's expression turned even darker. However, he could no longer care about Su Zimo. That was because he had yet to break free from Yin Beichen's killing intent. Chapter 1300, Might of Hatred. Chapter 1300, Might of Hatred. Under the encirclement of more than 30 mighty figures of sword sect, Yin Beichen wielded the hatred Fiend Saber and suddenly roared into the skies. The howl was sorrowful and tragic. Everyone who heard it felt immense pain and hatred. It was a sound domain attack from the Hatred Sutra. Back when Su Zimo fought Dao Lord Hatred, he saw the latter release this sound domain's secret skill. However, compared to Yin Beichen, Dao Lord Hatred's sound domain secret skill was way too inferior. Without experiencing immense changes, Dao Lord Hatred could not comprehend the pain, despair, and hatred of the Hatred Sutra deeply. However, it was different for Yin Beichon. Su Zimo knew of Sound Domain's secret skills such as Thunderclap Kill and Daming Mantra to begin with. When released, he could control the range of his attacks and would not injure others by mistake. However, Yin Beichon's Sound Domain's secret skill was an attack of indifference. All the cultivators in Heaven and Earth Valley were enduring the impact of the howl. Everyone could not help but feel sadness, despair, and hatred. The mighty figures of Sword Sect closest to it were stunned and had shocked expressions. Clang, clang. The Hatred Fiend Saber buzzed and trembled. It became extremely excited when it sensed the hatred in Yin Beichon's heart. My hatred. Yin Beichon's eyes turned pitch black like two bottomless abysses. With a tragic roar, he strode forward and slashed in reverse towards a mighty figure of Sword Sect. The Hatred Fiend Saber transformed into a black streak of light and arrived instantly. Before the blade descended, the intent of boundless hatred transformed into streams of pitch-black fiend chi that coiled around the mighty figure of Sword Sect. No matter how sharp the mighty figure of Sword Sect was, he could not sever the fiend chi around him. The Hatred Fiend Saber descended and sliced the mighty figure of Sword Sect into two. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died. The hatred fiend chi around Yin Beichon surged endlessly, and his entire body seemed to have transformed into an endless abyss. It sucked the surrounding mighty figures of Sword Sect, wanting to devour them. I hate everything. Yin Beichon roared once more and arrived before another mighty figure of Sword Sect, slashing with his saber. Break! The mighty figure of Sword Sect was impressive as well. He emanated a sword chi that destroyed all life and severed the hatred fiend chi that bound him. He broke free and slashed in reverse towards the Hatred Fiend Saber. The Hatred Fiend Saber shone brightly. Snap! Right in front of everyone, the mighty figure's sword was severed by the Hatred Fiend Saber. The Hatred Fiend Saber continued slashing down and killed another mighty figure of Sword Sect. A mighty figure of Sword Sect was about to release a supreme sword Dao when his eyes met with Yin Beichon's fiendish eyes, and he froze on the spot. His eyes were also gradually tainted by the fiend chi. Black fiend chi started spreading out from his body. A conjoint body mighty figure soul was bewitched by Yin Beichon's visual technique, and he could not control himself. The Hatred Fiend Saber slashed once more. A gigantic head was sent flying. This mighty figure of Sword Sect had not woken up even till his death. After killing 3 mighty figures of Sword Sect with 3 slashes, the might of the Asura shocked the entire cultivation world once again, causing an uproar. The Hatred Sutra is indeed terrifying. Heavenly Secrets narrowed his eyes and murmured. He did not attack and stayed out of things right from the beginning. Everyone, don't panic. Summon the Earth-slaying sword formation and kill the Asura with the might of the sword formation. Immortal Sword reminded hurriedly. In the ancient era, the Sword Emperor obtained one of the 3 great sword arts, the Earth-slaying sword art. However, the Earth-slaying sword art was not easy to cultivate and its killing intent was too strong. It was extremely powerful and a backlash would occur if one was careless. The best-case scenario would be chi deviation. In worst-case scenarios, they might even die on the spot with their blood splattered. Later on, the Sword Emperor deduced the lifeless sword art from the Earth-slaying sword art. Although it was extremely powerful, it was relatively easier to cultivate and had been passed down till this day. As for the Earth-slaying sword art, it could be released in the form of a sword formation. With many mighty figures sharing the killing intent of the Earth-slaying sword art, there would be no backlash from the killing intent. Sure. The remaining mighty figures of Sword Sect calmed down and set up a sword formation, channeling streams of cold, murderous sword chi. Instantly, the ground quaked. One after another, gigantic cracks appeared, as though a dragon snake was alerted. When the Earth's killing intent is released, the dragon snake shall rise. Yin Beichon looked at the incoming sword chi with an indifferent expression. His white hair danced and his black eyes were dead. If someone could cultivate the earth-slaying sword art single-handedly, they might be able to threaten him. Now, although many mighty figures of Sword Sect had formed the earth-slaying sword formation, they had completely lost the sharpness that the earth-slaying sword art should have. Huff, huff, huff. The fiend chi on Yin Beichen surged and formed a pitch-black fiend sea that devoured all the incoming sword chi. Not only that, the fiend sea even absorbed all the dermic powers in the surroundings and grew continuously, forming even more hatred fiend chi. Earth-slaying sword formation? Break. Yin Beichen hollered and gripped the hatred fiend saber with both hands. Leaping up, he looked down and slashed down at the sword formation beneath viciously. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Countless swords fell. Many figures retreated with pale faces. Some of the mighty figures of Sword Sect could not even contain themselves and spat out a mouthful of blood with miserable expressions. Immortal Sword, even if the Sword Emperor is resurrected today, he won't be able to save you. Yin Beichen walked towards Immortal Sword step by step and said word by word. His voice was hoarse and deep, containing torrential hatred. Finally, a hint of panic flashed through Immortal Sword's eyes. Heavenly Secrets, we're on the same side. What are you waiting for? Immortal Sword shouted. Heavenly Secrets smiled indifferently and his figure flashed. Wielding his folding fan, he floated towards Yin Beichen. Since that's the case, let me test out the Asura's Hatred Fiend cultivation technique. On the other side, Su Zimo released 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi and killed a few conjoint body mighty figures on the spot, causing the remaining mighty figures to be flustered. Seizing the opportunity of the chaos, he waved his sleeves and sent Yin Chi, who had just charged forward, back to Ethereal Peak. Don't come. You can't interfere in this battle. Su Zimo's tone was resolute and unquestionable. But, young master, Yin Chi was reluctant. The old immortal crane shook her head gently. Yin Chi, listen to Zimo first. If you head up, he might be distracted because he has to take care of you. Although Yin Chi was unwilling, she could only stand on the spot and watch the battlefield with clenched fists. Not only did the 1,000 heaven-slaying sword chi fail to intimidate the conjoint body mighty figures, it enraged the super sects of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects even more. They were conjoint body mighty figures. How could they be pushed back by a Dharma Characteristic Tao Lord? Desolate Marshal, let's see how many times you can release a dermic art as such. A mighty figure of Chaos Essence Sect waved his hand and ordered, Mighty figures of Chaos Essence Sect, listen up, all of you. Attack and kill Desolate Marshal with all your might. Everyone, attack. Desolate Marshal is merely a Dharma Characteristic Tao Lord. I don't believe he can go against all of us. A mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper Sect waved his hand as well. Initially, only more than 50 conjoint body mighty figures attacked Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 conjoint body mighty figures had gathered after the first clash. Furthermore, that number was still increasing. Chapter 1301, Supreme Dharma Characteristic. Chapter 1301, Supreme Dharma Characteristic. Since you guys want to know my combat strength, I'll let you have your fill. Against the incoming conjoint body mighty figures, Su Zimo's eyes lit up and a boom sounded from his body as 3 phantoms soared into the skies. Desolate Marshal has indeed condensed 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics. The rumors were not fake. As expected of the number 1 monster incarnate in history, even when they were at the Dharma characteristic realm, the ancient emperors can't compare to him. Even if his combat strength is heaven-defying, it's useless. Desolate Marshal will definitely die if he wants to save the taboo living being. His cultivation path will come to an end here. The crowd discussed fervently. However, those discussions faded before long. Finally, the dense crowd fell into a dead silence. The eyes of the cultivators were filled with endless shock as the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics rose continuously. 80 feet, 87 feet, 89 feet. It did not stop. 90 feet. Supreme Dharma characteristic. Furthermore, There were 3 of them. Normally speaking, conjoint body mighty figures had already fused their heaven and earth Dharma characteristics into their bodies, and their auras were powerful. Even if a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic was dozens of feet tall and was indomitable, it could not compare to a conjoint body mighty figure in terms of aura. However, it was different for a supreme Dharma characteristic. A supreme Dharma characteristic stood in the void and was one with heaven and earth to begin with. It was like a divine being that had descended and emitted a terrifying aura that threatened everything. A single supreme Dharma characteristic was enough to cause a stir in the cultivation world. The mental and visual impact of 3 supreme Dharma characteristics was unimaginable for the cultivators. It was not only the Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present. Even the conjoint body mighty figures that charged forward were shocked and their expressions changed. How strong was it for someone to condense 3 supreme Dharma characteristics single-handedly? If that person were to fuse the 3 supreme Dharma characteristics into his body and advance to the conjoint body realm, how strong would he be? Many conjoint body mighty figures could not imagine it. Or rather, they did not dare to think about it. Initially, the experts of the primordial 6 races were merely watching the entertaining show merrily. The moment they saw the 3 heaven and earth Dharma characteristics descend, the expressions of the experts of the primordial 6 races changed as well. The golden crow third prince narrowed his eyes and murmured with a shimmering gaze, "Interesting. There are 3 supreme Dharma characteristics. This monster incarnate of the human race is very scary. If he grows up, he might not be inferior to the human emperor." The mighty figure of the heavenly eye race said slowly. Rakshasa Feng Tian licked his lips, seemingly unconcerned. "There are many humans, and they are as vast as ants. It's only normal for 1 or 2 monster incarnates to be born." Even though he said that, the experts of the primordial 6 races no longer had smiles on their faces. Their relaxed expressions from earlier on had vanished as well. Although they were unwilling to admit it, they knew in their hearts that they might not be a match for Dao Lord Desolate Marshal if he was at the same cultivation realm as them. This was definitely not a good sign for the primordial 6 races. They were born strong and had noble bloodlines. At the same cultivation realm, they could sweep through the 10,000 races and suppress everything. Apart from the ancient era where they lost to the eternal human emperor, Fiend Emperor Hatred and other emperors, they had never felt threatened most of the time against enemies of the same cultivation realm. However, they felt threatened by Desolate Marshal. Of course, the experts of the primordial 6 races could still hold their ground. After all, they had dozens of conjoint body mighty figures here, and they were an entire major cultivation realm higher than Dao Lord Desolate Marshal. Once the human race was almost done with fighting, any single mighty figure would be able to settle everything. On the battlefield, dark clouds gathered above the head of the thunder-dermic body as it stood on a sea of lightning. Its body was coiled with blinding electric currents, and it was domineering. Wielding a whip made from millions of lightning, it looked like a lord that looked down on the world with a torrential aura. The Ruli-dermic body assumed a lotus position on a golden lotus platform with a dignified expression. It shone with a divine Buddhist light and lowered its head as a series of deafening Sanskrit sounds emanated from it. The heavenly fiend Dharma body was shrouded in fiend chi, and its eyes were pitch black. It was shuddering and wielded the heavenly fiend scythe that was surrounded by an aura of death. It was like a god of death that had walked out of hell and could reap the lives of any living being. "Kill!" Su Zimo shouted. The 3 supreme Dharma characteristics protected him in the middle and moved at the same time, charging towards Night Spirit who was locked in the distance. Piak! The thunder whip danced and tore through the air, whipping a conjoint body mighty figure during his moment of paralysis. The body of the conjoint body mighty figure was split into pieces and a blood mist spewed. Sure. An essence spirit escaped from the battlefield in a panic and only managed to barely survive because it did not turn back. The power of a supreme Dharma characteristic was enough to kill conjoint body mighty figures. The conjoint body mighty figure was enraged and had an anguished expression, but there was nothing he could do. Conjoint body mighty figures had immense vitality and could regrow severed limbs. However, his physical body was shattered and could not be recovered. Rebirth through blood was a power that only Mahayana realm cultivators possessed, and it was a form of divine powers. Blood gushed out from the battlefield. A large head was severed by the heavenly fiend scythe, and the essence spirit within was corroded by the fiend chi before it could escape, dying on the spot. When the conjoint body mighty figure who escaped initially saw that, he felt a sense of relief. At the very least, he was still alive compared to that mighty figure. Boom! The Rulai dermic body conjured dermic seals with its palm, and a huge shadow engulfed a conjoint body mighty figure, suppressing him beneath. The Great Mount Meru seal. Before the conjoint body mighty figure could say anything, he was crushed into sludge by the Great Mount Meru seal released by the Rulai dermic body. 2 conjoint body mighty figures were killed in succession after the 3 supreme Dharma characteristics descended and unleashed their divine might. Everyone, don't panic. A supreme Dharma characteristic is only a heaven and earth Dharma characteristic at the end of the day. No matter how strong it is, there's a limit. The mighty figure of Heavenly Dipper sect said in a deep voice. Even without his reminder, the other mighty figures calmed down. Those who could cultivate to the conjoint body realm had experienced way too many battles in their lives. What had they not witnessed before? Even if the appearance of Su Zimo's 3 supreme Dharma characteristics managed to stun them momentarily and allowed him to kill 2 mighty figures, the remaining conjoint body mighty figures recovered in the blink of an eye. If they were ordinary conjoint body mighty figures, they would indeed not be able to defend against the killing power of a supreme Dharma characteristic. However, the conjoint body mighty figures present were all from supersects of the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sections. All of them were paragons and monster incarnates that ruled over a region. Bang, bang, bang. Many conjoint body mighty figures attacked, and many mighty figure dermic weapons tore through the air and descended. Countless dermic arts poured down and charged towards the 3 supreme Dharma characteristics. The 3 supreme Dharma characteristics did not manage to protect Su Zimo for long before they stopped. They were restrained on the spot by the endless attacks of the conjoint body mighty figures and could not advance. However, with the protection of 3 supreme Dharma characteristics, it was extremely difficult for many mighty figures to injure Su Zimo as well. The 3 supreme Dharma characteristics waved a thunder whip, condensed dermic seals of the Buddhist monasteries, and swung the heavenly fiend scythe. They were like a divine being with 3 heads and 6 arms with incredible combat strength as they defended against the attacks of many mighty figures from the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects and looked down at the world in an unparalleled manner. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.